What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty. Join my Discord if you want to chat and share your thoughts, the link is in the description. Pirate Role-Playing System 1PS Chapter 1 The First Character Template, Uchiha Madara. The first is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 1, Character Template 1, Uchiha Madara, First Update, Seeking Collection of Flowers and Votes. The Boundless Sea, a common passenger ship slowly moving forward, creating gentle ripples. Zhao Xu sat in the lowest third-class cabin, vigorously brushing a set of armor with a brush. Finally, is it done? Zhao Xu sighed, his hands feeling a bit numb. He appeared to be around 17 or 18 years old, although his hair was slightly messy due to lack of care, his face still carried a sense of handsomeness. Advertisement. Although this handsome appearance was now filled with helplessness. Zhao Xu was a native of the Blue Star, and about a month ago, he woke up and crossed over to this world, quickly learning about the information of this world. One Piece. It was a magnificent and passionate world. Pirates, marines, 4 emperors, 7 warlords of the sea. One powerful hockey user after another galloped on this vast sea, performing a wonderful life. Accompanying his crossing was a God-level role-playing system, of unknown origin. The God-level role-playing system targeted a character, and the more Zhao Xu played like that character, the closer he would get to that character's strength. And when his authenticity reached 80%, he would completely obtain all the power of that character. If the authenticity exceeded 80%, the power he obtained might even surpass the original character. And the first character template given to Zhao Xu by the system was none other than the legendary strongest antagonist of the Hokage world, Uchiha Madara. Unfortunately, the progress was currently at 0%, because he hadn't put together a set of Big Brother's equipment. It wasn't easy to act well. Temperament, strength, appearance, and acting skills were all essential. Without equipment, without strength, even if he said a bunch of Big Brother's lines, the villagers around him would only look at him like a fool, unable to gain recognition. Naturally, there would be no progress. The hairstyle and folding fan were relatively easy to prepare, but it was difficult to find Big Brother's armor. This Wano-style armor couldn't be found at all in the small village Zhao Xu crossed over to. Advertisement. After waiting for half a month, Zhao Xu finally found a merchant selling this set of armor. Then, because he didn't have enough money, in order to buy this set of armor that was already old and almost an antique, he followed the merchant all the way and even boarded this passenger ship, just barely gaining the merchant's recognition and exchanging all his belongings for this set of armor. Currently, he was in the process of rust removal. Fortunately, the armor itself was red, otherwise, he would have to paint it with Big Brother's red paint. However, finally, the preparations are complete. Zhao Xu narrowed his eyes and slowly put on the armor. Then, he picked up the nearby Uchiha folding fan. Next second, ding dong, the strongest role-playing system. Host, Zhao Xu. Possessing character template, 1. Uchiha Madara, 20%. Next second, a series of images deeply imprinted in Zhao Xu's memory entered his mind. 6-year-old Uchiha Madara, throwing shurikens at targets with a group of Uchiha children in the clan's residence. 9-year-old Uchiha Madara, practicing fire-style ninjutsu under the guidance of the clan elders. 11-year-old Uchiha Madara, engaging in a battle with a ninja wearing a certain clan's forehead protector. 13-year-old Uchiha. Everything seemed to be deeply imprinted in Zhao Xu's mind, unforgettable. His body also seemed to become stronger in an unimaginable way as the images played, and a surge of energy circulated within his body. This energy was chakra, used by ninjas in the Hokage world. After a long time, Zhao Xu opened his eyes, a sharp light flashing in them. These costumes are not complete yet, but fortunately, the first template is Uchiha Madara. Advertisement. Without hesitation, he formed hand seals according to the memory and chakra surged along with it. Transformation technique. Boom. A Uchiha Madara from Zhao Xu's memory appeared in the cabin. Sure enough, Uchiha Madara, 20%, had become Uchiha Madara, 30%. The memory is about 15 years old, and my strength. He lightly moved his hand, and the memory from Uchiha Madara told him that he now had the strength of an elite Jonin. The peak of an elite Jonin at 15 years old, this was only 30% of Big Brother's strength. Just by changing into the equipment and using the transformation technique, I have 30% authenticity and the strength of an elite Jonin. A glimmer of brilliance flickered in Zhao Xu's eyes. What if it's 80%, 100%, and above 100%, can I be more authentic than Uchiha Madara himself, surpassing 100%? And it wasn't just about combat power. The memories of 17-year-old Uchiha Madara, his battle experience, the mysteries of ninjutsu, familiarity with interpersonal relationships. Everything was imprinted in Zhao Xu's mind. It could be said that he could fully unleash the full strength of 17-year-old Uchiha Madara. And the most crucial thing was, now, I can finally start my performance. Zhao Xu's mouth curled up. Suddenly, a loud rumbling sound. The passenger ship shook violently. At the same time, a cry of alarm reached Zhao Xu's ears. There are pirates. Chapter 2. Do you want to dance too? Second. More please collect flowers tickets. Chapter 2. Do you want to dance? Second update, seeking collection and flower tickets. Boom. 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 The cannons roared, creating waves after waves. It was a medium-sized ship with 2 masts, flying a flag that resembled a leopard skull. The gray sails were filled with wind, and the sharp bow gleamed with oil, like a unicorn galloping on the sea. And this pirate ship was continuously firing at the passenger ship Zhao Xu was on. Chaos erupted on the passenger ship, and everyone's faces turned pale. It's the Kangbao pirate crew. Damn, how did we encounter them? Why are there still pirates like them in this sea? Are they crazy? Damn it. Change course, turn the sails, raise the wind. The Grand Line was filled with countless pirates, but there were few like Luffy who called themselves pirates but were actually adventurers. Most of them were ruthless individuals who killed, burned, and plundered. The Kangbao pirate crew was one such ruthless group. Captain Kangbao was a notorious pirate with a bounty of 60 million berries. Even in the Grand Line, he was not someone to be underestimated. Ha ha ha, raise the sails. This time, we'll make a big haul. On the pirate ship, a sturdy man with a cannon attached to his arm laughed heartily. I knew coming to a place like this would be profitable. That's right, boss, you're brilliant. Those cowards dare not come to this sea area, they can only watch us feast. Our boss is the best, stronger than that blue shark. This sea area was said to be the hunting ground of a powerful pirate crew. Advertisement: many pirates had fallen into the hands of that pirate crew. Because this pirate crew controlled such a large area of the sea, the chances of encountering them were low, so many passenger ships took this route. At the same time, it also caught the attention of Kangbao. Ha ha ha. Kangbao laughed heartily, raising a small cannon in his right hand. My men, raise the sails and charge, gold, women, they're all there. The Kangbao pirate crew took advantage of the favorable wind, and their ships were specially built for short-distance acceleration. They also had many oars, making them extremely fast. The cannons kept firing, rapidly closing in. Although the sailors on the passenger ship fired back with their cannons, both in accuracy and power, they were far inferior to the enemy. Soon, the 2 ships approached, and Kangbao leapt onto the passenger ship without hesitation. With a casual swing, he killed a trembling sailor holding a gun and laughed heartily. Everyone, attack. This ship is mine now. The pirates showed their ferociousness, grinning as they jumped onto the ship. Passengers and sailors hurriedly fled into the cabin. If it were any other pirates, there might still be a chance to escape. But Kangbao and his men were desperados, and even surrendering wouldn't change their fate of being killed. HMPH, hiding in the cabin, does that help? Kangbao sneered, then without hesitation, ordered the pirates to charge forward. However, in the next second, boom, with a loud bang, the pirates who were about to kick open the door, along with the surrounding pirates, were blasted through the deck. Advertisement: at the same time, a man leapt onto the deck. He wore a black tight combat suit, with red layered armor on the outside. His shoulder-length black hair hung quietly, and his hands were crossed in front of his chest, his crimson eyes filled with disdain. Who? Kangbao's expression changed. From this man, he felt a strong sense of threat. However, the man just glanced at him casually, showing no intention of responding. Of course, Kangbao also had no intention of asking further. He shouted loudly. Fire. Boom. 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 The 3rd gate cannons fired simultaneously, and in an instant, the spot where the man had stood turned into a sea of fire. HMPH. Fool. Kangbao sneered, although I don't know your name, I'll still ask you to die obediently. But in the next second, a cold and proud voice came from beside him. I am Uchiha Madara. What? Kangbao was suddenly shocked. The man who should have been killed by the cannons was standing beside him, and he didn't know when he had appeared. Uchiha Madara calmly glanced at him, then swept his gaze around the surrounding pirates who were on high alert, and said lightly. Do you all want to dance as well? Chapter 3 Devil Fruit. The 3rd change is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 3. Devil Fruit. Chapter 3. Seeking collection of flowers and votes. Do you also want to dance? Uchiha Madara's words were incredibly calm, yet they brought an unparalleled pressure. Facing numerous pirates, he suddenly took a step forward. His footsteps started off slow, but the speed kept increasing, and his armor made a clanging sound. Damn it! Kangbao roared. Attack! Kill him! Ah! The pirates shouted and charged forward. They had their own fighting arts, with ferocious and violent roars that could lower the enemy's morale and instill fear. However, it was meaningless against the man in front of them. Uchiha Madara's footsteps became faster and eventually turned into a sprint, colliding fiercely with the oncoming pirate army. Boom! In the instant of the clash, countless pirates were sent flying. A pirate swung his right fist, but Uchiha Madara simply sidestepped, dodging the attack, and then punched the pirate's abdomen, sending him flying off the ship and into the sea. Punching, kicking. Sometimes he even took the pirate's swords as weapons. His attacks were swift, his movements quick. So strong, Kangbao widened his eyes. This wasn't just about being physically strong or fast, it was the strength that came from experiencing countless battles. Every move Uchiha Madara made was without any excess. While accurately killing his enemies, he didn't use excessive force or speed, conserving his own stamina. Even in a group battle, he never allowed himself to be surrounded by enemies, maximizing his killing efficiency. This guy, did he crawl out of a pile of corpses? Kangbao was dumbfounded. How could he possess such a level of killing skill if he hadn't experienced countless battles? Zhao Xu only obtained about 30% of Uchiha's strength, but that 30% was also Uchiha Madara's power. And Uchiha Madara, he was a man who emerged from an era of constant warfare under Sengoku. Advertisement. Even if he wasn't in his strongest state, he was still enough to crush everyone present. His Crimson Mangekyo Sharingan continuously scanned the surroundings, mercilessly taking down his opponents. Every move he made resulted in an enemy dying by his hand. Damn it! Kang Bao suddenly raised the cannon on his severed arm, aiming it at Uchiha Madara. Although there were still many of his subordinates there, he couldn't care about that anymore. But before he could fire, a Crimson Mangekyo Sharingan reflected in his pupils. The next second, as if an invisible force grabbed hold of his cannon, it aimed at the area where the pirates gathered the most. Boom! A large number of pirates instantly lost their lives. 3 minutes later, Kang Bao suddenly woke up and realized that he was the only one left in the area. Looking at the figure on the armor, not even blood or dust had stuck to it, he was filled with fear and kept retreating. What kind of expression is that? Uchiha Madara calmly walked forward. We've known about our differences before, haven't we? Yes. Otherwise, why would I let those pirates charge ahead? Thinking this, in the next second, Kang Bao was completely engulfed in boundless darkness. It's over. Uchiha Madara, or rather Zhao Xu, sighed inwardly. As someone who had crossed over from the peaceful Blue Star, he had no combat experience. But when he started to move, he was like Uchiha Madara himself, without any hesitation. Even before the enemy made a move, he had already seen through their actions and decided on his next attack. So this is the power of the role-playing system? Zhao Xu's eyes flashed with excitement. This was only 30% of Uchiha Madara's power. What if it was 100%? If he played a character with more than 80% accuracy, he would surpass Uchiha Madara in his prime. And this was just one template. What if there were more templates? Advertisement, mythology, novels, anime, games. There were plenty of powerful beings capable of destroying heaven and earth. And the strongest role-playing system. Host, Zhao Xu. Character templates. 1. Uchiha Madara, 37%. The progress has increased. Zhao Xu's eyes flashed with excitement, ignoring the knowledge that had suddenly appeared in his mind. Is it because of my performance just now? Am I becoming more and more like Uchiha Madara? He had deliberately said many things to imitate Ban Yi for this purpose. It seemed like the effect was pretty good. Now, I should have already stepped into the realm of a cage-level shinobi. Zhao Xu narrowed his eyes. Then, he walked directly towards the pirate ship. The pirates had already been cleared out, and he had no intention of letting go of the remaining spoils. Although he wasn't familiar with the name Kang Bao, he could tell from the panic on the spectatorship that this was definitely a cruel person. It wouldn't be right if he didn't have anything good in his hands. Sure enough, after searching for a while, he really found something good. A deep purple pineapple with incredibly strange patterns on it. This was a devil fruit? Zhao Xu's eyes flashed with excitement. But in the next second, he became even more excited. Ding dong, special energy detected ahead, can forcibly increase the realism of the character template. Would you like to absorb it? Chapter 4. The 9 Snake Pirates Attack. The fourth change is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 4. The Attack of the 9 Snake Pirates. Fourth update, please collect flowers and votes. Devil fruits, known as the treasures of the sea, are a specialty of the pirate world. Even the worst devil fruit has a market value of at least 100 million berries. If it possesses a powerful ability, it could be worth 1 billion or even tens of billions. However, for Zhao Xu, what excites him is not just a mere devil fruit. It's the system prompt. It can actually enhance realism? Realism directly affects Zhao Xu's strength, which is more important than money by 10,000 times. Moreover, Zhao Xu doesn't have any devil fruit encyclopedia and doesn't know what kind of abilities the fruit can bring. The risk of eating it is great. Besides, considering the strength of the guy called Kang Bao, Zhao Xu doesn't think he can possess an exceptionally powerful devil fruit. So, absorb. Ding dong, absorbing energy. Converting energy. Host, please choose the upgrade template. Uchiha Madara, character template. Uchiha Madara, 37%, to Uchiha Madara, 40%. The next second, a wave of memories rushed into his mind. Zhao Xu closed his eyes and immersed himself for a moment. After a short while, he opened his eyes. His eyes had 3 tomo spinning rapidly, and then they finally transformed into a strange pattern. Mangekyo Sharingan. On the other side, as Zhao Xu killed the pirates and retreated into the guest room, the sailors and guests gradually began to poke their heads out. Advertisement, especially when the first brave sailor saw the deck full of corpses, he was first shocked, then immediately smiled. Who did this? It's Kang Bao. The notorious pirate with a bounty of 60 million, died so quickly here. Do we have such a powerful guest on our ship? Everyone was shocked, and some brave sailors even looked towards the direction of the pirate ship. There, Uchiha Madara didn't mind the gazes of the crowd at all, casually collecting the pirates' treasures. This attitude made people feel at ease. Soon, under the captain's orders, sailors rushed over to help Uchiha Madara clean up the spoils. Many merchants also gathered together, preparing to pool money as a thank you gift. However, a plump merchant hesitated for a moment when he looked at Uchiha Madara, then quietly walked into a guest room. Zhao Xu. Zhao Xu. His voice was very soft. The guest room door opened, and Zhao Xu's figure walked out. When he saw that person, he showed a smile. Uncle, you're still alive, that's great. This merchant was the one who sold the armor to Zhao Xu. Although he was stingy as a businessman, after Zhao Xu pleaded with him several times, he sold the armor to Zhao Xu at a very low price. He could be considered a good person. Are you okay? The merchant's face showed some concern. I seem to see him coming out of your room just now. Oh. Zhao Xu blinked his eyes. Here, he was just a small clone. Although the shadow clone was developed by the second Hokage, it didn't exist in the current class's abilities. But he still had other clone techniques. For example, the one he used now was the water clone. The purpose was to prevent this kind of situation. So Zhao Xu's clone thought for a moment and smiled. It's fine. Actually, I've been hiding it from you. Uchiha Madara is my brother. Brother? The merchant was taken aback. He knew Zhao Xu and knew that he was very poor. And yet, someone like him had such a powerful brother? Yes, my brother. The water clone nodded without hesitation. In fact, this was also part of his plan. Advertisement. The role-playing system couldn't rely solely on the abilities of the devil fruit to get by. To truly become powerful, he had to rely on his own practice. Apart from his strength, arrogant personality, and the identity of a boss, the most obvious characteristic of Uchiha Madara was his Brokon attribute as a member of the Uchiha clan. Having a little brother like Zhao Xu not only conveniently increased the plot and showcased Uchiha Madara, but it also allowed Zhao Xu to gain some benefits legitimately. After all, Uchiha Madara wouldn't ask for anything that didn't fit his character. There was also another issue. For example, it seemed that Master Ban was still single in the end. But Zhao Xu had no problem. He could even use the excuse of proliferating and strengthening the Uchiha clan to obtain many benefits with the help of Ban's identity and strength. Ahem. I see. The merchant's eyes indeed showed more respect when he heard this. It was respect for power. Zhao Xu casually made up a few excuses to deal with the merchant. However, it didn't take long. Pirates are here. A sailor standing on the lookout tower shouted in panic. Everyone's expressions changed, but they looked towards the figure standing on the pirate ship with a sense of relief. Even in the Grand Line, where many experts gathered, pirates like Tin Bao were rare. With him around, there shouldn't be any problems. But before everyone could relax, the sailor shouted in terror. Everyone, run! It's the 9 Snake Pirates. It's the 9 Snake Pirate crew. This sea area was the hunting ground of the 9 Snake Pirates. Chapter 5 My brother doesn't like noise, please be quiet. Chapter 5. My brother doesn't like noise, please keep it down. First update, seeking collection of flowers and tickets. It was an incredibly massive ship, being pulled forward by 2 enormous sea serpents beneath its hull. A flag was hanging above, with the image of a woman's face whose hair resembled long snakes. It was the flag of the 9 Snake Pirates. Ordinary merchant and passenger ships naturally did not have the means to cross the calm belt. If the 9 snakes wanted to go out and plunder, they had to go to the Grand Line. This sea area was actually the hunting ground where the 9 Snake Pirates most frequently appeared. While they attacked merchant ships, they also attacked other pirate ships, which is why other pirates dared not approach. And because of the 9 Snake Pirates' dominance, they pushed out other pirate crews, making the risk for merchant and passenger ships lower than in other seas. However, the captain of the passenger ship never expected that not only did they encounter a wounded leopard first, but they also encountered the 9 snakes. How unlucky can one get? Uchiha Madara, or Zhao Xu, gently lifted his head. In fact, he noticed the 9 snakes earlier than the lookout. With the visual acuity of the Sharingan, he could clearly see every detail of the 9 Snake Pirates' ship, including the tall woman standing at the bow. Quick, escape, escape, retreat, retreat. The crew members were filled with fear and quickly fled into the passenger ship, preparing to set sail and escape. Zhao Xu, hurry! The merchant shouted at Zhao Xu. It's fine. The clone smirked. It's fine. Saying that, he walked briskly towards the original's position. The merchant opened his mouth but ultimately said nothing, fleeing into the ship. A mere passenger ship, in front of the 9 snakes, had no ability to resist and could only run away. However, the ship that had already been heavily damaged in the previous battle, how far could it run in haste? Sure enough, before the passenger ship could run a few steps, the 9 snakes ship had already caught up. At this moment, Uchiha Madara standing on the pirate ship also clearly saw the appearance of the woman at the bow. She was an incredibly tall woman. Advertisement fair-skinned, with skin as smooth as jade, her long black hair casually hung down. Her face was exquisitely beautiful, like a fairy in a painting, ethereal. Even the passengers who were originally in a panic to escape, upon seeing that woman, seemed to be stunned for a moment, standing there motionless, forgetting to run away. Pirate Empress, Boa Hancock, the world's recognized #1 beauty. Hancock-sama, over there. A woman next to her whispered. I know, Hancock nodded gently. Strangely, even though the 2 ships had already approached each other, the 9 snakes crew did not immediately begin looting. Instead, they armed themselves completely. The people on the passenger ship who finally reacted to the situation dared not escape and could only stand trembling on the side. Before long, another ship arrived. The ship was tall and made entirely of steel, with the deck seemingly reflecting silver light. It was a marine vessel. And on the ship, a man wearing marine uniform and a cloak of justice took a step forward and said loudly, "Hancock, I've been waiting for you. How are you considering it? The 7 warlords of the sea, joining or not joining? Based on your answer, I will decide whether to sink you all right here." If it were someone else, they would probably be disgusted. Although Hancock is not yet the future pirate empress of the 7 warlords of the sea, she still has a bounty of 80 million and is incredibly powerful. Even those arrogant pirates need to deliberately avoid her ship. Someone like her, speaking in such a tone. However, even the warriors of the Kuja tribe have a hint of seriousness in their eyes. Because the person standing opposite them is Akainu. One of the 3 admirals of the Marines, renowned and with outstanding achievements. His strength is extremely strong. Akainu's expression is dignified. In fact, the Marines had already contacted the Kuja tribe a long time ago, but they had not received a response. The Kuja island is located in the Calm Belt, and the Marines still cannot mass-produce ships that can cross the Calm Belt. Advertisement therefore, he quietly roamed in the hunting waters of the Kuja tribe, even deliberately letting out some bait. Like the remnants of the leopard, finally, his efforts paid off, and he caught the tail of the Kuja tribe. "Answer me, Hancock," Akainu said in a deep voice. "Or do you still want to continue delaying?" On the bow of the Kuja ship, Hancock furrowed her brows slightly, then chuckled softly. "If I personally feel that I still need to consider it? Do you think we will always indulge your capriciousness?" Akainu said in a deep voice. The next second, Hancock, upon hearing this, smiled gracefully. Her smile was as beautiful as a flower, of course. Hancock's posture remained high and mighty, with a faint smile on her lips. She calmly said, "No matter what I do, I will be forgiven because I am too beautiful. Just with you, you dare to meddle in my affairs, HMPH. A faint snort revealed her arrogance. Even in the presence of the Marines under the world government, even in front of an admiral, she remained just as proud. The killing intent was raging as they clashed, bringing about a sense of oppression. Even the turbulent sea seemed to flatten before the 2 forces of killing intent, not daring to disturb them. However, suddenly, in this extremely silent environment, a voice suddenly appeared. "Excuse me, my brother doesn't like noise. Could you please be a little quieter? If you want to fight, please go fight somewhere else." Zhao Xu showed a gentle smile. "Otherwise, if something bad happens, it won't be good." Behind him, Uchiha Madara closed his eyes, expressionless. Chapter 6 Admiral Akainu actually escaped? Second more please collect flowers tickets. Chapter 6. Admiral Akainu escaped. Second update, seeking collection of flowers and votes. "Excuse me, but my brother doesn't like noise. Could you please keep it down? If you want to fight, please do it somewhere else. Otherwise, if something bad happens, it won't be good." Calm words, calm smile. However, saying such words in this situation drew everyone's attention. At the same time, there were 2 murderous gazes. Hancock's beautiful eyes shifted back and forth between Zhao Xu and Uchiha Madara behind him. Who does this person think he is, daring to speak like this in front of her and Marine Admiral? Judging from his appearance, he doesn't seem to be a famous pirate. Akainu's reaction was even more direct, seeking attention. Akainu snorted coldly, looking at the pirate flag on Zhao Xu's ship. A hint of killing intent flashed in his eyes. "Look at that flag. Are you also a pirate? One of Kizaru's subordinates?" Although Kizaru's bounty is not high, Akainu knows this person as bait. Seeing Zhao Xu standing on Kizaru's ship, he naturally instinctively regarded him as one of Kizaru's subordinates. "Never mind, no matter what you are, since you're a pirate, I'll just get rid of you." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand without hesitation. Magma surged into the sky and the temperature around instantly rose. His arm turned into red-hot magma, condensing into a magma fist, fiercely striking towards Zhao Xu. The Snake Empress hesitated, just using this guy to demonstrate Marine's power and make Hancock accept her fate. Boom! The magma hit the ship, causing a huge explosion. However, the next second, both Hancock and Akainu's pupils contracted. A skeletal arm blocked all the magma, and the source of that arm. Advertisement. Who gave you the courage to attack my little brother? Uchiha Madara suddenly opened his eyes showing a unique blood-red shape, filled with a sense of killing. Susano. Mangekyo Sharingan. After experiencing a performance and absorbing a devil fruit, Zhao Xu's realism increased once again. Now, he already has the strength of a peak cage level. It's just a matter of time before his eyes evolve into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, just like in the battle against the first generation. What? Akainu's face became serious. What ability is this? A devil fruit. Even the Snake Empress squinted her eyes, looking at the man who stood up slowly with haki. That skeleton that was unharmed by Akainu's attack, what exactly is it? Suddenly, both of them's expressions changed. They saw Susano's arm suddenly wave, dispersing all the surrounding magma. Then, Uchiha Madara leapt up and jumped onto the sea surface. Susano followed his movements and jumped onto the sea surface as well. Then, something that shocked both of them happened. Uchiha Madara and Susano were actually able to stand on the water surface and charge towards Marine's warship. He can actually stand on the water's surface? Isn't he a devil fruit user? Akainu thought to himself, but his subordinates didn't hesitate. The giant fist of magma and Susano's arm collided fiercely, creating a violent roar. Boom! The sea trembled, the ship swayed, countless Marines showed panic, but many Marines, led by their officers, fired at Uchiha Madara. Of course, it was meaningless in front of Susano. Bang! The two clashed again. Akainu's face became serious as he fell onto the swaying deck. He is an admiral, but he has to concentrate his energy on the battle. The ship was thrown into chaos by the aftermath of the clash between the two, and there was not even a suitable place to stand. Advertisement: the enemy's strength is not much weaker than his own, and he can freely stand on the water's surface and at the same time. Akainu glanced at Hancock. Hancock is a pirate, although he wanted to extend an invitation to her to become one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Does a pirate need a reason to attack Marine? So, the warship slowly moved away, gradually becoming a small black dot, leaving everyone dumbfounded. Akainu actually escaped. Although there is the presence of the Snake Empress, the disadvantage of the ability user on the water's surface, and Akainu's uncertainty about whether that man is really a pirate, but he actually escaped. Admiral Akainu escaped in front of that man? Uchiha's group didn't pursue, they just glanced at the snake's ship, then cancelled Susano and returned to Kizaru's pirate ship. Hancock squinted her eyes and remained silent for a moment. Let's go back to the snake. It's completely unclear whether that man is an enemy or a friend, or even who he is and what his name is. But it's better to have fewer troubles. As for Kizaru's ship and the already distant passenger ship, let's just give this person some face. Yes, Empress. The snake's crew members were not foolish and naturally had no objections. The 2 sea snakes turned their bodies and steered the ship. The sails fluttered, and before entering the calm belt, the sails could also alleviate the fatigue of the sea snakes. However, the members of the snake didn't notice. In a shadow in the cabin of the snake, Zhao Xu revealed a smile. Chapter 7, for example, killing celestial dragons or something. Chapter 7, such as killing celestial dragons, etc. Third update, seeking collection of fresh flowers and votes. Snake Island, also known as Daughter Island, Daughter Country, and Amazon Lily, is an island located in the calm belt. There are no men on the island, but the population is not small, and they are all strong women, with powerful strength and robust bodies. Hockey can even be considered their standard configuration. It can be said that their strength is not insignificant. And the Kuja pirates are selected from this elite population and led by the Empress, who is also the Emperor's official pirate crew. It can even be said that this pirate crew is the main source of income for Snake Island, obtaining various resources through it. Therefore, the people of the Kuja pirates are regarded as heroes by the women on the island. The buildings on the island are in Chinese style, and rows of women welcome their Empress on the specially made pier. Hancock is the first to step out, walking across the wooden planks connecting to the ground, and walking on the red carpet specially laid out for her, amidst the cheers of the crowd, heading towards the palace. Naturally, the soldiers of the Kuja bring the loot from the pirate ship back to the treasury. The people of the Kuja, who are accustomed to this, do not need the Emperor to worry about it at all. Lady Hancock, would you like to eat first, or take a bath first, or? A female official asks as she walks alongside Hancock. Hancock ponders for a moment. Let's prepare for a bath first. Yes. Meanwhile, a warrior's shadow emerges from the shadows, then quickly disappears. Every time Hancock takes a bath, it is quite grand. Closing the city gates, erecting fences, nationwide martial law, soldier escorts, palace guards. Even at the entrance, there are 2 sisters standing guard. Sandersonia and Marigold, although not well known, they also possess the strength of vice admirals. Of course, that is in the future, but for now, they are still the strongest presence in Snake Island. Their public claim is that the 3 sisters defeated the monster Gorgon in the Central Sea, and were cursed by it. Once they take off their clothes and reveal the eyes on their backs, people nearby will turn to stone. Of course, in reality. Ready, lady sister, Sandersonia whispers. Hancock nods gently and walks into the bathroom. Then she takes a deep breath and releases her observation hockey. Advertisement: this has become her daily routine. Years have passed, and she has been so careful in checking every time she takes a bath. Although there have been no problems under multiple layers of protection, she still can't afford to be careless. Carefully sensing the surrounding environment, Hancock finally breathes a sigh of relief, then removes her clothes, revealing her fair skin and slender waist and legs that can be held with one hand. The warm steam brings a sense of comfort and relaxation. Unfortunately, although Hancock has a bad temper and doesn't care much about extravagance and waste, this nationwide bath blockade obviously cannot be enjoyed for too long. Not to mention, the sisters also need to take a bath. Hancock breathes a sigh of relief, slowly walks to the edge of the pool, raises her slender foot, and steps into the water, letting her body slowly immerse in it. And the next second, tisk tisk tisk. A sound rings out, Hancock's face changes drastically, and she suddenly crouches down. Who's there? Bang! Younger sisters Sandersonia and Marigold heard a sound and rushed into the bathroom. What's wrong, lady elder sister? they widened their eyes and looked at the man sitting calmly on the bathroom floor with a smile on his face. It's you, isn't that Zhao Xu? The brother of the man who fought against the Marine Admiral, and also one of the triggers of that battle. How could he appear here? Lady elder sister, this. He saw it from behind. Hancock clenched her teeth, her eyes filled with embarrassment and anger, but mostly fear. What? Sandersonia and Marigold's faces changed drastically. This is the secret that they least wanted anyone to know. Damn it, what are the guards doing? Sandersonia couldn't help but curse. Zhao Xu shrugged. He had just enjoyed a good feast for the eyes. As for the guards, advertisement ninjas are primarily engaged in intelligence gathering, infiltration, and assassination. Although Uchiha Madara prefers direct confrontation, it doesn't mean he doesn't possess these basic ninja skills. Hancock stood up and slowly backed away. When a normal woman is interrupted while bathing, her first reaction should be to turn around and face away from the intruder. But she covered her vital parts and faced Zhao Xu, slowly retreating. Who are you people? Hancock gritted her teeth, while taking the bathrobe from her sister's hand. At the same time, she gave her sisters a signal with her eyes. The sisters understood and slowly turned their steps, attempting to surround Zhao Xu. They had witnessed Uchiha Madara's strength in the previous battle. Although the older brother and younger brother may not have the same level of power, just like the three sisters, if the elder sister is strong, the younger sisters won't be too weak. I am a ninja, just like Uchiha Madara. Zhao Xu seemed to not notice their movements and continued to sit there, smiling. Hancock's face turned cold, a glint of coldness flashed in her eyes, but her words continued, are you the kind of ninja from Wano country? This person in front of her must die, and he must die without revealing her secret. So, even if she has to fight against the man who can confront an admiral head-on, they must kill this man. They must be fully prepared to have enough chances of winning. However, Zhao Xu seemed to completely ignore their movements and continued to sit there, saying with a smile, that's right, but we are more inclined towards assassination, infiltration, and taking on some contracts. We can accept your contract to kill certain important figures, like... Hancock suddenly gave her two sisters a signal. Hancock made a heart shape with her hands. Sandersonia held a weapon, and Marigold's face began to transform into that of a snake. But just as they were about to take action, they all suddenly stopped. Because the sentence Zhao Xu said was, like killing celestial dragons. Chapter 8 9 Snakes Commission. The first is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 8. The commission from the 9 snakes, first update, seeking collection of fresh flower votes. Celestial dragons are the world's nobility, possessing almost absolute power and protected by the naval headquarters. They are the most esteemed existence in the world. Merely offending them would result in being pursued by an admiral, let alone attempting to assassinate them. Are you saying that your brothers have taken on the commission to assassinate celestial dragons? Hancock's body stiffened upon hearing this. The two sisters stood there dumbfounded, their mouths slightly moving and their bodies trembling. The tragic reason for their sisters' suffering was the celestial dragons. Upon hearing Zhao Xu's words, not to mention the two sisters, even Hancock's heart felt an unusual impulse. Commission him. Kill that damn guy. If it were someone else, they might not be able to accomplish this, but if there is someone with the level of power like Uchiha Madara, it's really possible to kill the celestial dragons. However, Hancock quickly calmed down. One hand couldn't help but reach behind her, her gaze cold and stern. If you think you can say such things just because you see the seal behind me, and expect me to let you go, then you are gravely mistaken. You will meet your end here. Upon hearing Hancock's words, the sisters also calmed down. In reality, Uchiha Madara, who possesses the power of an admiral, could indeed kill the celestial dragons. Even the strong admirals under the 4 emperors, as well as the 4 emperors themselves, have the potential to kill the celestial dragons with their strength. But the celestial dragons have been arrogant for hundreds of years and have never experienced an assassination. Because even the subordinates of the 4 emperors, or even the 4 emperors themselves, are afraid of unnecessary trouble. Assassinating the celestial dragons is not difficult, and the likelihood of success is high, but what comes next? Can you escape the pursuit of the Marines? Will Sengoku not take action? Will the 5 elders turn a blind eye? It's not that they can't be killed, but why bother? In reality, even if Hancock herself is willing to pay any price, she could possibly kill a celestial dragon. Advertisement, but she dares not. Killing the celestial dragons may bring temporary satisfaction, but the insane retaliation from the world government is something that no one can bear. Even the 4 emperors, don't be in such a hurry. If I say I can take on the commission, there must be a reason. Zhao Xu smiled. Anyway, whether you suffer any losses or not, it doesn't matter. I can act as a hostage for you. This statement made the 3 sisters even more intrigued. Hancock gritted her teeth and still didn't believe it. Maybe you just want to meet your brother. Zhao Xu smiled and said, you can use a knife, a bow and arrow, or anything else to aim at me. If anything unexpected happens, you can immediately attack me. Who knows if you might suddenly make a move. You can also mobilize your 9 snakes army. In case you fail, you can inform the world government about our information. Risk is always something that must be taken, but as ninjas, guarding secrets is our professional code of conduct. Hancock kept asking questions, finding one reason after another to distrust Zhao Xu. But each one was countered by Zhao Xu's response, making the two sisters more and more intrigued. Even Hancock herself was somewhat swayed. Their hearts always held onto the hatred behind them. If there was no hatred, no humiliation, why would they make such a big fuss every time they took a bath? After hesitating and considering for a long time, Hancock finally spoke. "All right, take us to find your elder brother. If you can truly do it, we won't mind this offense." Zhao Xu finally showed a smile. The next question then was how to avoid their sight, use a clone to replace oneself, and then transform into Uchiha Madara. In reality, there was no need to worry about this question. Advertisement: the appearance of a man on Amazon Lily Island was not a small matter, let alone the matter of Hancock entrusting Zhao Xu. It was not something that could be made public. Following behind Zhao Xu were only the three Hancock sisters. "And so, this is your reason for aiming arrows at my younger brother?" Uchiha Madara's face was cold, a fierce killing intent soaring into the sky. "Please calm down a bit. It was your younger brother's request." Hancock felt a sense of trepidation, a hint of fear flashing in her eyes. Whether it was an illusion or not, she always felt that he was stronger now than when he fought against Akainu. "Calm down, brother, I'm fine." Zhao Xu's clone smiled. Hearing the words, younger brother, Uchiha Madara finally calmed down a bit, but the look in his eyes as he looked at Hancock and the others still carried an extremely cold chill. Hancock coughed. "Let's discuss the specifics when we return to the city." Uchiha Madara nodded. Back at the palace, there was no need to explain much about the subsequent discussion. The mission was accepted, and the reward was all the devil fruits in the inventory of Snake Island. Although devil fruits were expensive, Hancock, due to her own reasons, didn't want the warriors of Snake Island to eat them unless they were her sisters or some kind of animal-type devil fruit. Otherwise, her deception might be exposed at any time. Of course, she didn't fully trust Zhao Xu and the others either. Although Zhao Xu wanted her to give the reward in advance, she insisted that the devil fruits be handed over to younger brother Zhao Xu as a hostage. Uchiha Madara would go assassinate him, and after the news spread, they would send Zhao Xu to a small island in the Grand Line. Zhao Xu had no problem with this arrangement. After all, he could transform again at a later time and absorb the devil fruits without any issues. There was no transformation technique in the world of pirates, so finding a flaw was easy. And so, ding dong, special energy detected ahead, can forcefully enhance the realism of character templates. Would you like to absorb it? Chapter 9. Who is that Uchiha Madara? Second, more please collect flowers tickets. Chapter 9. Who is Uchiha Madara? Second update, seeking collection of flowers and votes. This island will do. Hancock's expression was cold as she looked at the man slowly walking down from her ship. Uchiha Madara nodded expressionlessly, then looked towards Zhao Xu. Hancock had a smile on her lips, and by now, she had regained some of her true nature, speaking lazily. "What's wrong? Worried that we'll do something to your little brother?" Uchiha Madara didn't directly answer, only saying calmly, "Once, I had 5 brothers." Once? Hancock was taken aback. Now only Zhao Xu is left. Uchiha Madara said calmly, "So, no matter what happens, I will protect this brother. At any cost." His words were calm, but carried a seriousness beyond imagination. Clearly, he truly intended to follow through with what he said. Upon hearing this, Hancock couldn't help but think of her own sister. She no longer put on a pretense like before and said, "Rest assured, although Kuja Island is remote, we won't mistreat your brother. Besides, this is Amazon Lily, countless men want to come in. Your brother should be happy staying on Kuja Island." Uchiha Madara didn't say anything, only quietly walked towards the island. Although Kuja was strong, they were not yet Shichibukai. At most, they dared to sail their ships close to Saboti Archipelago and let Uchiha Madara go on his own. Uchiha Madara nodded and didn't say much, just quietly walked forward. It wasn't until the ship was out of sight that he let out a sigh of relief and then with a touch, cancelled the transformation technique. Finally resolved. Zhao Xu let out a breath. Acting was also tiring, especially when playing the character of Uchiha Madara, who had a proud personality. He was afraid that if anything went wrong or if he showed any flaws, it would reduce the realism that he had worked so hard to achieve. But, the rewards are great. Zhao Xu revealed a smile. Host. Zhao Xu. Character template possessed. 1. Uchiha Madara, 57%. He was getting closer and closer to the Uchiha Madara of his prime. You see, the Uchiha Madara of his prime, also known as 6 Paths Madara, possessed 6 Paths level power and was one of the strongest characters in the Hokage world. 80% can obtain the power of Uchiha Madara in his prime. Now, I'm getting closer and I'm curious about what will happen if it surpasses 80%. Zhao Xu squinted his eyes. Advertisement, but it seemed that the further he went, the harder it was to improve the realism. At first, simply changing clothes gave Zhao Xu a 20% increase in realism. Using the transformation technique directly increased it to 30%. The first devil fruit he ate was the same. 1 devil fruit gave him a 3% increase. But after obtaining 3 devil fruits from the Empress, the average increase for 1 devil fruit was only 2%. During this period of acting in the final portrayal of Brokon, the increase was not significant, only about 6% in total. Was it because his portrayal didn't meet the standard, or was it too difficult to improve? Or perhaps, different audiences would bring different feedback. Zhao Xu fell silent for a moment, shook his head, and said, compared to a portrayal that is hard to figure out, using devil fruits to improve is much simpler. Although the increase from devil fruits decreased as he went on, it was still a shortcut compared to portraying without a clear goal. But shortcuts were not easy to take. Devil fruits were known as treasures of the sea, and they weren't easy to find. Unless Zhao Xu looked in a certain direction, his eyes narrowed. There weren't many devil fruits in other places. Even after years of accumulation on Kuja Island, there were only 3 devil fruits. But on the side of the celestial dragons, there are so many that they can feed slaves. So that's why I want to find them, the 9 snake pirates ship. So this is a man? It's my first time seeing one. It seems like he was brought from 9 Snake Island. Why would Lady Hancock bring a man here, and it seems like she even let one off the ship? In the past, weren't these guys just killed directly? The warriors of the 9 Snake all looked with great interest at Zhao Xu, who was being held hostage. Even while working, they would occasionally steal glances at him. In the 9 Snake, men were rare creatures. Even for those who frequently went out to sea, they didn't have much contact with men. After all, most of their interactions were just battles. Now, they finally had a man, and he was alive. Advertisement. It would be strange if these women weren't curious. Finally, one person couldn't resist their curiosity and secretly reached out and pinched Zhao Xu. His muscles are so hard, is this what men are like? Then a bunch of hands grabbed at him. Huh? It's true. Look, he doesn't have a chest, he doesn't have one. Really? Let me see too. Be careful, I felt a dagger on his waist just now. Be careful if the man goes crazy. Zhao Xu. Being a hostage was impossible. He would never be a hostage in his lifetime. At most, he would leave a clone to deal with them. But the corner of the clone's mouth twitched. Although being surrounded by beautiful women like this felt good to listen to, but who told them that the women of the 9 Snake were all beautiful? Take Hancock's 2 sisters as an example, those muscles, those thighs. Their arms were thicker than Zhao Xu's waist. Unfortunately, the 9 Snake valued strength as beauty. It's not that there weren't any slim and beautiful ones, but most of them were tomboys, with arms that could run like horses and fists that could knock people out. And as the most powerful force in the 9 Snake, the pirate crew was naturally robust. I'm just a small clone. Why'd I have to bear the charm and wit that I shouldn't have in this identity? Meanwhile, Naval Headquarters. Akainu said in a deep voice, have you investigated thoroughly? Who exactly is this Uchiha Madara? Chapter 10 Infiltrating Marijoy. The third change is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 10. Infiltrating Marijoy. Third update, please collect fresh flower tickets. In front of Akainu, a marine officer-like person held a report in his hand and said, reporting to Admiral, according to the intelligence from a passenger ship, the 2 brothers, one named Zhao Xu, initially appeared in Shangxi town and later boarded the passenger ship. The other person is named Uchiha Madara, who seems to be Zhao Xu's brother. The passenger ship Zhao Xu boarded was not a secret and had long been under the control of the Marines. It was only natural to gather some information, however. And then, Akainu frowned, dissatisfied, and said, apart from their names, don't you know anything else? Yes. The officer blushed and had to lower his head. Apart from their names, the Marines' proud intelligence system really couldn't find any other information. It was as if these 2 people suddenly appeared. Akainu said discontentedly, how could such powerful individuals just appear out of thin air? Continue the investigation. Yes, the officer responded. In fact, he did find some other information, such as the fact that the person named Zhao Xu seemed to have no abilities. But he neglected to report this. How could someone who dared to challenge Admiral Akainu be an ordinary person? However, the officer hesitated for a moment and said, Admiral Akainu, could it be that Uchiha Madara is from Wano country? His name sounds like someone from Wano country. The swordsmen of Wano country were well known, as were the ninjas. If they were ninjas who adhered to covert operations, combined with Wano country's closed geographical environment, it would be normal for the Marines' intelligence system to not find any information about them. Perhaps. Akainu nodded, having already thought of this. However, advertisement, if he just came out by chance and then returned to Wano country obediently. Akainu narrowed his eyes. As an admiral-level individual, how much trouble could he cause on this vast sea? How much disturbance could he create? In reality, it was similar to what Akainu had thought. Currently, Zhao Xu, or rather Uchiha Madara, was climbing the red line. Phew. Such strong wind. Zhao Xu transformed into the appearance of Uchiha Madara and continued to climb upwards. The journey so far had no problems, and he had directly arrived at Saboti Archipelago, then walked on the water's surface to reach this place and began climbing the mountain. Although it was called climbing a mountain, it wasn't like Tager, who climbed with his bare hands. Instead, he walked forward by stepping on the ground with his feet. Ninjas in the Hokage world used an energy called chakra. With the help of this energy, they could release and absorb it from their footsteps, allowing them to stand on the water's surface or step on walls and trees as if they were on the ground. With the template of Uchiha Madara, Zhao Xu could naturally do the same. The red line was nearly a kilometer high, but if one walked, it would only take a little over 10 minutes. We're here. Zhao Xu, or rather Uchiha Madara, lay on the edge of the cliff and cautiously stuck his head out. Uchiha Madara had an extremely domineering personality, but that didn't mean he couldn't infiltrate or assassinate. Before Uchiha Madara obtained such immense power, he often took on similar missions and naturally learned the techniques of infiltration and assassination. Of course, with the power he had later on, he could simply push his way through and didn't need the current methods of infiltration. But for Zhao Xu, this represented his own actions, which still didn't exceed the scope of Uchiha's character. So, he chose to assassinate using this template's appearance. Joy was the center of the world, and assassinating here might encounter quite a few audience members, allowing Uchiha Madara to perform well as a character. As for Zhao Xu himself, he would just obediently act as a younger brother. The next moment, a patrolling soldier walked past not far in front of Uchiha Madara. Advertisement, and after he passed, Uchiha Madara's figure disappeared. In a blind spot where a surveillance denmushi was located. Bang! Uchiha Madara held a soldier's neck with one hand, pressing him against the wall, and his Sharingan eyes spun like windmills. Look into my eyes. The soldier's face was full of fear, unable to speak. However, soon, his emotions calmed down, and his eyes became lifeless. Where is Saint Henrietta? Uchiha Madara calmly asked. Saint Henrietta, the enemy of Hancock. Hancock had told Uchiha Madara almost all the information, including Henrietta's surname, the locations of some houses, and some strong individuals and mechanisms. However, she had escaped for several years, so she didn't know if this information was outdated. The soldier, in a daze, said, I don't know. Uchiha Madara furrowed his brow. It was normal for a small soldier not to know the location of the celestial dragons. Then, where is Henrietta's courtyard? The soldier with lifeless eyes replied, to the west of here. Where exactly to the west? To the west, everywhere. Uchiha Madara, Chapter 11 Assassination of Celestial Dragons. The first is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 11. Assassination of the Celestial Dragons. First update, seeking collection of flowers and votes. Setting aside the soldier at any time, when Uchiha Madara walked out from the corner, he had already transformed into the appearance of that soldier. He walked towards the place the soldier pointed to, encountering inspections along the way, and even guards blocking his path. However, under the effects of transformation technique, genjutsu, and other ninja techniques, they had no effect. At the same time, he kept asking for directions, constantly changing his identity and using ninjutsu from time to conceal his presence. Finally, he found his target. The Celestial Dragons are the descendants of the 20 kings who established the world government 800 years ago, considering themselves as descendants of the creators. Due to their self-perceived nobility, they disdain breathing the same air as ordinary people and wear bubble-like headgear. They treat people of other races as slaves, not considering them as human beings. Among the Celestial Dragons, Henrietta Saint is one who particularly enjoys having slaves. In his prison, there are more than 900 slaves. It should be noted that this is the result of accumulating slaves almost from scratch after Tiger freed all the slaves about 3 to 5 years ago. In other words, almost every day or two, a slave is bought. When Celestial Dragons purchase slaves, except for a few Celestial Dragons, most of them will not have any relationship with female slaves. They believe that having a relationship with female slaves would taint their bloodline. They purchase slaves mainly for using them as dogs, for transportation, and for showing off their difference from the lower class people. However, Henrietta Saint is a bit different. He purchases slaves not for showing off, but... Are the slaves ready for today? Henrietta Saint's face was full of fat, revealing an excited smile. They have been prepared for you a long time ago, the butler beside him bowed. Good, then let's begin, Henrietta Saint said without hesitation. Yes, soon, 2 people were brought out and thrown into the central square. The butler introduced today's 2 slaves. One is a pirate captain who has eaten the devil fruit, and the other is a strong fishman. It should bring you some amusement today. Then why don't we start right away? Let them get to work quickly. Henrietta Saint eagerly grabbed the railing in front of him. Advertisement gladiatorial combat. This is his interest in collecting slaves. Sometimes, in order to find some amusement, he would even specifically purchase devil fruits for the slaves to eat. Let them begin. The butler ordered the people beside him. Yes, in fact, they didn't need to be ordered. The 2 slaves glanced at each other and spontaneously started fighting. Delaying is useless. If they both delay, Henrietta Saint would order them to be killed together. Even if their fighting spirit is slightly lacking, they would be discarded. Bang, bang, bang. The 2 immediately started fighting, and there were already guards guarding in front of Henrietta Saint. As for Henrietta Saint himself, he watched the scene of fists hitting flesh and blood flowing, his face showing a drunken flush. That's right, fight, keep fighting for me, bite him to death for me. The 2 duelists chosen were indeed worthy, their strength was evenly matched, it was a bloody battle. In the end, the fishman slave killed the captain slave at the cost of severe injuries. However, Henrietta Saint was still very dissatisfied and said, I clearly told you to bite him to death, why didn't you do it? Bang. Before the fishman could say anything, Henrietta Saint simply raised a pistol and shot the fishman dead. Plop. The body fell to the ground, but the people around were unfazed. The butler waved his hand and had the servants take away the two bodies. This is just a daily occurrence. Henrietta Saint was not satisfied and was about to order the capture of two new slaves when suddenly. Henrietta Saint. Right? A cold voice with a hint of chill sounded. Advertisement? Who called me? Henrietta Saint turned his head and saw a figure with crimson eyes. Who are you? What are the guards doing? The butler's face changed and he stood in front of Henrietta Saint. From this person in front of him, he felt a bone-chilling coldness. Suddenly, he froze, and the crimson figure was already standing in front of him. A hidden blade slashed, cutting a gash in his neck, blood trickling down. Zhao Xu didn't even want to talk to these trash. Although he had long known that celestial dragons were absurd, he didn't expect reality to be even more absurd than he imagined. He's the enemy, he killed Butler Olin. The surrounding guards trembled, their faces filled with fear. Butler Olin was the strongest among them, yet he died so easily at the hands of the intruder? However, they gritted their teeth and charged forward. It wasn't that they liked protecting the scum in the middle, but if they didn't protect him well, not only themselves, but even their loved ones and friends would suffer. Perhaps the invaders feared the retaliation of the celestial dragons, but even if it was just defending Henrietta Saint, they. However, when Henrietta Saint saw the butler's death, instead of feeling sad, his eyes lit up as he looked at Zhao Xu. Good. You're so strong, decided. You will be my slave, Henrietta Saint grinned and revealed a smile. I'll let you fight with my slaves, it'll definitely be fun. He knew that the person in front of him was very strong, but so what? Rarely did someone dare to harm the celestial dragons? Upon hearing this, Zhao Xu was momentarily stunned, then he immediately smiled indifferently. Idiot, truly beyond help. Chapter 12 I cured his brain damage. Chapter 12. I cured his brain damage, second update, seeking collection of fresh flower votes. Marijoy Defense Department. Oh no. A soldier ran over with a serious expression on his face. The officer was taken aback, looking at the soldier. What's wrong? The soldier gritted his teeth and said, we found a corpse of one of our patrol soldiers in a place where the Den Mushi surveillance couldn't see. The officer frowned. Isn't it normal to have a corpse? There are always some young and energetic guards who can't tolerate the behavior of the celestial dragons and seek their own death. They are often killed on the spot by the celestial dragons and then discarded. This has become a common occurrence. But, the soldier swallowed and said, but we saw from the recording that the killed soldier walked towards the courtyard of Henrietta Saint. What? The officer was stunned, his face changed drastically. Quick. Inform the naval headquarters, soon. The whole Marijoy was in action. Although they were decadent, they were not fools. A person who can transform their appearance and rush towards the celestial dragons poses a considerable danger, no matter what their purpose is. If it's someone from the Revolutionary Army, Admiral Akainu quickly rushed over, his face grim. In fact, he didn't want to deal with the celestial dragon's nonsense at all, but unfortunately, Marijoy and the naval headquarters were quite close, leaving him no chance to refuse. Not only Akainu, but when Akainu arrived, an elite team had already assembled and rushed towards the courtyard of Henrietta Saint with him. Advertisement: the celestial dragons have been despised by people for a long time. If the security is too lax, there probably wouldn't be many celestial dragons left now. In fact, when Akainu arrived, a group of guards had already surrounded the gate of Henrietta Saint's courtyard. There is no one passing through here. His Highness Henrietta is playing gladiatorial combat. If we disturb His Highness's interest, can you bear the consequences? Several gatekeepers gritted their teeth and intercepted the crowd outside the gate. The guards looked at each other but couldn't forcefully break in. The capriciousness of the celestial dragons might lead to the gatekeepers being killed along with themselves. Even though they came for the safety of the celestial dragons. That's enough. Akainu finally arrived and stood in front of the gatekeepers. Open the gate. He looked displeased, but he didn't hold any grudges against these people. They were all forced by the celestial dragons, but seeing the Marine Admiral arrive, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Although the celestial dragons were capricious, the Marine Admiral still had the authority to disturb them. Even the 5 elders wouldn't punish Akainu for such a trivial matter. Yes. The gatekeepers immediately breathed a sigh of relief and opened the gate. Akainu walked in with big strides, but as soon as he entered, his expression changed. Silent. Too silent. The celestial dragons were not quiet individuals, and according to the gatekeepers, Henrietta should be engaged in gladiatorial combat. Is that something quiet? Akainu absolutely didn't believe it. His face turned ugly, and he took a few quick steps. As expected, he saw the body lying on the ground, one person wearing a bubble on his head, dressed in luxurious clothes, obviously Henrietta Saint. At the same time, there was another person. Advertisement. Uchiha Madara. Akainu's eyes flashed with anger. Oh, Akainu. Uchiha Madara walked out from the back passage with big steps, a smile on his face. What are you doing here? Akainu's heat began to rise, ready to attack. Oh, it's like this, my friend. Uchiha Madara said, stepping on the bubble on Henrietta Saint's head, and said, I suddenly got a disease called brain damage, so. Akainu squinted his eyes and asked, so what? Uchiha Madara chuckled lightly and said, so I cured him. Akainu's anger grew even stronger. How did you cure him? I cut off his head. Uchiha Madara said casually, no matter who it is, once their head is cut off, they won't be brain damaged anymore. As he spoke, he casually kicked the head of the person on the ground to the side. Henrietta Saint's face was filled with disbelief. He seemed completely unable to understand why the person in front of him dared to attack him, a celestial dragon. The blood of the celestial dragons is also red, no different from the killed guards. What a good method. Akainu's anger turned into a smile, and the lava on his arm suddenly erupted. Dark Hound. In an instant, the entire palace seemed to be on top of a furnace. And at the center of the scorching lava, it seemed that even the flames could be melted. The lava fist that was capable of destroying everything fiercely smashed towards Uchiha Madara. However, Uchiha Madara just smiled faintly and said, "That's right, I think so too." The next moment, boom, Chapter 13 Complete Body Susano. The third change is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 13. Complete Form Susano. Third update, seeking collection of fresh flower votes. The scorching lava collided with the deep purple arm, causing the entire hall to tremble. Akainu took big strides forward, continuously unleashing punches of lava. Here, there was no sea level for Admiral to retreat. The Uchiha clan was not polite either. Susano was no longer just a skeletal arm, but a humanoid figure. Based on the skeleton, it was covered with meridians and flesh, wrapped in a cloak like chakra. As the realism increased, his eyes had long turned into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and he no longer needed to conserve his eye power like before, only using the simplest skeleton. Boom! The iron fist of lava and the fist of Susano collided, creating a resounding roar. Then, the scorching lava was shattered by the reinforced fist. So tough. Akainu squinted his eyes. Indeed, the transformation of that huge figure greatly enhanced this man's strength. Or perhaps, this was his true strength. However, he was completely fearless. He hadn't fully utilized the power of his devil fruit yet. Not to mention the characteristics of a Logia devil fruit. Boom. 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 The two continued to clash. Relying on the elemental transformation ability of the Logia devil fruit, Akainu fearlessly withstood the attacks of Susano after realizing that Uchiha Madara didn't possess Haki. Uchiha Madara didn't mind either. Susano was both offensive and defensive, and the opponent's attacks couldn't harm him. However, the reinforcements are increasing. The Crimson Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan glanced at the marine soldiers behind him. Below Marijoy was the headquarters of the Marines, and reinforcements kept pouring in. It was even possible for the Celestial Dragons to send reinforcements. Although many Celestial Dragons were brainless, as someone who was familiar with the original work, Zhao Xu definitely wouldn't underestimate this entity that had ruled the seas for hundreds of years. Leaving aside the annoying behavior of the Celestial Dragons, they had remained unharmed under the protection of the Marines until now. It couldn't be solely because the Marine Admirals of past generations and high-ranking officials of the world government were supremely loyal to the Celestial Dragons, right? He didn't know about ordinary Celestial Dragons, but the 5 elders and that mysterious IM made him wary. Well, since the job is done, it's time to retreat. A smile suddenly appeared on Uchiha Madara's face. Advertisement, Akainu furrowed his brows. The next second, Susano's iron fist fiercely struck, once again smashing Akainu into his elemental form. Then, without hesitation, Uchiha Madara took large strides and ran towards the distance. Not good, he wants to escape. Akainu quickly returned to his original form and, seeing Uchiha Madara's actions, his expression changed. There was a cliff over there, and beneath the cliff was the sea. For someone who could step on Minato, running to the edge of a cliff almost meant a successful retreat. To let a man who had infiltrated Marijoy alone and killed celestial dragons escape unscathed. The face of the Marines. No, the face of the world government would be completely lost. Don't even think about running. Akainu was furious and threw a punch. Great eruption. The enormous lava fist erupted in a manner similar to a volcanic eruption, transforming into dozens of countless volcanic projectiles. The power of each volcanic projectile was enough to easily destroy a supersized warship. 8-foot Chonghook Jade. Uchiha Ban embraced his arms, and Susano's 2 arms turned, throwing several huge Chonghook Jade connected by rope-like objects as if throwing shurikens. Boom. The 8-foot Chonghook Jade collided with great eruption, creating a tremendous roar. A storm swept through, and Susano's body accelerated its pace. The giant strides of Susano may not be fast, but its enormous body can take steps hundreds of times larger than an ordinary person, enough to compensate for its seemingly slow movements. In just a few steps, it reached the edge of the cliff. However, in the next second, Susano suddenly leaned its body, and a beam of light hit its shoulder, almost piercing through it. How terrifying. But if we let you escape like this, it would be a disgrace to the Marines. With a strange tone and a lazy demeanor, a man wearing a Marine Admiral cloak stood not far behind Uchiha Ban. Admiral Kizaru. Advertisement, why are you here too? Akainu had also arrived by now. If I didn't come, he would have escaped, Kizaru said nonchalantly. 2 Marine Admirals gathered together. The Marine soldiers who arrived later showed joy on their faces. They won. They could finally win. Are there any forces stronger than these 2 Marine Admirals? However, the people involved were not as relaxed as the soldiers. Be careful, the opponent is strong, Akainu said solemnly. I know. Kizaru looked at Susano, which couldn't be completely penetrated, a hint of seriousness flashing in his lazy eyes. However, this was as far as he could go. Even if they joined forces, they couldn't easily escape, not even against the 4 emperors. But, a Marine Admiral, huh? Interesting, ha ha ha. Uchiha Madara suddenly burst into laughter. Then Uchiha Madara, will also use a little bit of strength. In the next second, his chakra suddenly erupted. Deep blue chakra soared into the sky, but Madara himself gently closed his eyes. Whether it's a Marine Admiral or anyone else, everything is futile. Akainu and Kizaru both had stunned expressions. The giant in front of them had turned into the size of a small mountain. At the same time, its form underwent a tremendous change. The armor grew larger, the face transformed into a Tengu-like appearance, wings emerged from its back, and 2 swords were held in its hands. Like a heavenly god, just with this, complete body Susano. Chapter 14 Cut off the red line, the first one is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 14. Severing the red line, first update, seeking collection of fresh flower tickets. It's huge. Whether it was Akainu, Kizaru, or any elite marine, they all stared dumbfoundedly at the giant figure that resembled a small mountain. Being enormous doesn't necessarily mean being powerful. But most of the time, being enormous does represent being powerful. At the same time, Akainu, who had fought alongside Uchiha's group, noticed with seriousness that the energy of that colossal being was even more stable than before. Laser. Kizaru suddenly made a move, shooting a beam of light from his finger that hit Susano's shoulder. However, the same attack yielded a completely different result from before. Although the previous Susano was also strong, when Kizaru's laser hit it, even if it couldn't penetrate, it would at least break some of the armor and pierce through the flesh. But now, my attack couldn't even break through that armor? Kizaru squinted his eyes, no longer as lazy as before. The only one who can stop me is Senju Hashirama alone, Uchiha Madara, standing on the forehead of the complete Susano, said calmly and indifferently. But unfortunately, he's no longer here. But perhaps for you, it's actually a good thing. The deep blue Susano slowly drew its sword, because... In the next second, the sword gleamed. Be careful, Akainu's face changed, his arm turned into lava and transformed into the shape of a dog's head, biting down. Canine fangs of the red lotus. Kizaru also didn't hesitate to make a move. Countless flashes of light bullets rained down, 8-span Qian hook jade. However, under that sword strike, the combined full-force attacks of the 2 admirals were continuously suppressed and pushed back. The surrounding marine soldiers couldn't even get close and were blown away by the shockwaves caused by that swing. Because Uchiha Madara's words were calm, advertisement. If it were just me, the range of the rewritten map wouldn't be so large. Boom. The 2 admirals could no longer withstand that sword strike. Crack. A loud sound. The red line was split apart by that one sword strike. At the critical moment, the 2 admirals, who had transformed into elemental forms, avoiding death, stared dumbfoundedly at the enormous sword mark. This is Uchiha Madara. In reality, while the 2 admirals were astonished, Zhao Xu had already retreated. He finished showing off and still didn't run. Of course, one reason was the increasingly pleasing scene shown by the system. Host. Zhao Xu. Possessing character template. 1. Uchiha Madara, 64%. Before this battle, when he entered the Celestial Dragon's Palace, he was only at 57% progress. Before Akainu arrived, Zhao Xu searched the entire palace's inventory and found 11 devil fruits. This was already quite a lot. It was because of this Henrietta Saint liked to feed the slaves with devil fruits. Otherwise, ordinary celestial dragons wouldn't have collected so many. After absorbing the 11 devil fruits, the total progress only increased from 57% to 61%. A total increase of only 4%, compared to the previous 40% or so, it was almost 10 times less. However, in the following show-off, it unexpectedly increased the authenticity by 3%. Can one show-off be equivalent to 10 devil fruits? Obviously, even though devil fruits were used as shortcuts, playing the role was the best way to improve. Advertisement? No. Perhaps it's because this show-off is good. Using Uchiha Madara's own words, the audience is the admirals of the naval headquarters, and there is a group of marine elites below as well, Zhao Xu analyzed. The stage is also a problem. An incident in Marijoy is definitely the focus of everyone's attention. The news will definitely spread the next day. In reality, it was similar to what Zhao Xu had thought. Even though the transportation between the various islands in the Grand Line remained unchanged, normal newspapers were usually published once a week. But on that day, all the newspapers hesitated and urgently published extra editions. This was a major event. At the same time, marine soldiers were sent out like madmen, frantically searching for people on Sabodi Archipelago. Marine never gives up, so what if Uchiha Madara displayed powerful strength? Back then, Roger was also pursued by Garp. Uchiha Madara jumped off the cliff and disappeared without a trace. But even if he could walk on water, he definitely couldn't walk to other islands with his feet alone. He needed a ship, and when it came to ships, it naturally meant Sabodi Archipelago. In an instant, the pirates stranded on Saboti Archipelago suffered greatly. Sengoku personally led the team, with the 3 admirals sitting in command, and the Crane and others mobilizing troops to blockade the sea. Not to mention pirates, even some Grey forces were mercilessly killed. The 5 elders were going crazy. At this time, all forces chose to cut their losses and seek survival. Whoever dared to show their face would be killed. For a while, more than 80 pirate crews were wiped out on Saboti Archipelago, along with over 200 Grey teams, and the number of captured criminals reached thousands. Many people who relied on Grey forces for a living cursed loudly, and even the local residents were greatly affected. It wasn't until the next day when the news from the newspapers came out that everyone was shocked. Just who is this Uchiha Madara? Chapter 15 The world is shaking, second more please collect flowers tickets. Chapter 15. World shaking, second update, seeking collection of fresh flower tickets. Extra. Extra. Holy Land Marijoy attacked, red line severed, newspaper boys shouted loudly as they sold their papers. Have you heard? Holy Land Marijoy was pierced by an unknown person with a single sword. Oh my, that's really terrifying. No kidding, that day I heard a loud noise coming from Marijoy. People near Marijoy, especially those on Saboti Archipelago, were all crazily discussing the matter. The newspaper boys could only take a few steps before being stopped by people, and many clapped their hands in delight upon reading about the death of the celestial dragons and the severing of Marijoy in the newspapers. Marijoy, being close to Saboti Archipelago, was the place where the celestial dragons bullied people the most. Especially for ordinary people, saying, "I hope they die," was not an exaggeration. However, severed the red line, defeated 2 marine admirals, everyone's eyes gleamed as they read the newspaper. When this news spread, the world would once again be shaken. New World. A massive ship, resembling a whale, lay quietly on the surface of the sea. The Moby D*K. The fame of this ship was unmatched, even if you looked at the whole world. Because it was the battleship of that man, the world's strongest man, some even rumored that he possessed the power to destroy the world. Whitebeard, Edward Newgate, Dad, have you seen the news today? The 1st Division Captain, Marco, walked to the middle of the deck and waved the newspaper in his hand. Something big happened this time. La 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 la. I can imagine, Whitebeard laughed heartily. Is this a special edition? The last time we had such an edition was when Golden Lion caused trouble at the naval headquarters. Advertisement. As he spoke, he chugged down a jug of wine and then snatched the newspaper from Marco's hand. The next second, his eyes imperceptibly narrowed. La 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 la. Young people these days are truly remarkable. Whitebeard suddenly threw the wine jug aside, his eyes shining. Yes, his bounty has just been announced. Marco shook his head. Marco, are you also interested in him? Whitebeard shook his head, picked up the wanted poster from the newspaper, and shook it, a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Making such a name for himself on his first appearance, the celestial dragons must be driving that old man crazy with his achievements. Boisterous laughter echoed across the sea as Whitebeard looked up at the sky. A person who dares to kill celestial dragons. If possible, I really want to meet that guy named Uchiha Madara. A small island in the New World. On the island, poisonous insects were everywhere, and all water sources were toxic springs. The weather is scorching hot, and the toxic fumes rise from the poisonous spring. Even the birds in the sky cannot escape the disaster. But this island, known as the Land of Death, has welcomed a special guest. The toxins in the air cannot even slow him down for a second. The ferocious poison is afraid to approach him. The beast, Kaido, known as the strongest creature in the world on land, sea, and air, his extraordinary destructive power and immortality have led some to say, Kaido is probably the strongest in a one-on-one fight. What a boring world. He lies quietly in the poisonous spring, as if lying in a hot spring. After a moment of silence, he picks up a newspaper from the shore. This world has finally produced some interesting guys. I wonder if you can kill me. Advertisement, Uchiha Madara. As he speaks, he casually lets go of the newspaper, which falls into the spring and instantly emits a corrosive sound. In just a few seconds, it completely disappears from this world. Similar situations have occurred in various places. Doflamingo looks at the news and lets out a classic, ha ha ha, laugh. Interesting, they actually took down the celestial dragons. Hawkeye looks at the news and instinctively touches his sword. That giant who transformed into Uchiha Madara seems to use a sword too. Dragon picks up the news, says nothing, and falls into contemplation. But whether it's indifference, excitement, or some other purpose, the attention of the entire world is focused on that man's figure. At the same time, along with the news, a bounty is issued. Avenger Uchiha Madara, bounty, 1.5 billion berries. Note: if there is any information about the Avenger, report it to the Marines and receive a reward of 100 million berries. If there is any information about his brother, a reward of 50 million berries will also be given. The origin of this title seems to be because Zhao Xu killed the celestial dragons and wrote a message to convey it to the Empress. He casually carved the words, "Vengeance, I have taken it," with his shuriken. Although the lines are arrogant, the underlying meaning is, "Empress, should I get a raise?" But it seems that Uchiha Madara is misunderstood to have a grudge against the celestial dragons. Oh well, let it be. For example, Uchiha Madara has 5 brothers, and except for his brother Zhao Xu, the others were killed by the atrocities of the celestial dragons. Thanks to the Marines for adding drama to my alias, by Zhao Xu. Chapter 16 I said it's alright. Chapter 16. I said, it's nothing. Third update, please collect fresh flowers. The whole world was shocked by Uchiha Madara's audacity. What was Zhao Xu doing? He calmly walked into a bar. Shaki's rip-off bar. An empty tavern with a peaceful atmosphere. Shaki was wiping the counter. She used to be a pirate, but she retired 30 years ago. She was once pursued by Vice Admiral Garp, Luffy's grandfather, and was quite well known. Of course, she is now anonymous. She opened a bar on Sabaody Archipelago and also worked as an information broker. Ding dong. Welcome. Shaki's pupils contracted when she saw the visitor's face, but quickly returned to calmness. What would you like to drink? Yes. Uchiha Madara thought for a moment and said, Bloody Mary. Alright. Shaki smiled. The ingredients for a Bloody Mary include 50 milliliters of vodka, 10 milliliters of lemon juice, freshly ground pepper, salt, 2 dashes of Tabasco sauce, 4 dashes of Worcestershire sauce, and 120 milliliters of tomato juice. The specific method of making the cocktail is to take a tall glass, add some ice cubes, pour in all the ingredients except for the tomato juice, stir appropriately, then pour in the tomato juice until the glass is full, stir again, and finally garnish with a celery stalk or a whole shrimp. This is one of the most well-known cocktails, and as the owner of a bar, Shaki is quite familiar with it. However, for some reason, her movements in making the drink seemed slower this time. Before she could finish making the drink, a slightly imposing voice appeared at the door. What a rare guest. A steady footstep sounded, and a man with silver hair, wearing glasses, and a straight scar across his right eye walked in. Pluton, really? Uchiha Madara calmly said, as the vice captain of the Pirate King, is it really a good idea for you to come out at a time like this in the marine-controlled Sabaody Archipelago? It's still better than you, who killed celestial dragons, wandering around everywhere, isn't it? Pluton laughed heartily, sitting down next to Uchiha Madara, and said, this drink, I'll treat you. Thank you. Uchiha Madara calmly said, I happened to come here in a hurry and didn't bring any money. Who gave you the confidence to come and order a drink without money? Advertisement. Shaki was taken aback, then smiled bitterly and shook her head, but her speed in making the drink suddenly increased. However, Rayleigh, upon hearing this, burst into laughter. Interesting, interesting. A person who can take down celestial dragons is indeed much more interesting than ordinary people. He laughed heartily, his laughter carrying a wildness. Obviously, even after not being a pirate for many years, this vice captain of the Pirate King still carried the spirit of a pirate. After laughing, Rayleigh squinted his eyes and looked at Uchiha Madara. So, what are you here for? I didn't come here with any specific purpose, I just felt like I couldn't pass by Sabaody Archipelago without seeing Pluton. Uchiha Madara calmly said. Oh, Rayleigh squinted his eyes but didn't say anything. He didn't even know his own whereabouts, let alone how this person knew. But, are you planning to leave the island? Rayleigh smiled and said, well, I don't like celestial dragons either. I can help you with this favor. But you've got the wrong person. Even if it's me, I have to hide at a time like this. Sengoku has truly gone mad, and I don't want to be caught up in his mess. Uchiha Madara's expression remained calm. I told you, I just came to see Pluton. Rayleigh glanced at him, furrowing his brow. Sabaody Archipelago is already under marine blockade. Not to mention someone like you, even ordinary pirates or grey organizations that aren't considered criminals wouldn't dare to act recklessly. What do you mean, wouldn't dare to act recklessly? They're like dogs without a home. Shaki, annoyed, brought the freshly poured drink over to Uchiha Madara. Forget about them, my bar gets inspected a dozen times a day. Kid, how are you going to compensate me? Clearly, Pluton. Rayleigh was back, too. But in the next second, Shaki and Rayleigh both changed their expressions. The Marines are here, follow me. Rayleigh stood up directly, his face serious. With observation hockey, he had already sensed the presence of the soldiers. Although Pluton Rayleigh had aged significantly and looked very different from his younger self, the Marine soldiers might not recognize him. But the Avenger Uchiha Madara, who had just committed a major crime, was not among them. Fortunately, Shaki herself was an old pirate and naturally had a sense of danger, preparing several hiding places. Rayleigh took a few quick steps, intending to lead Uchiha Madara away. Advertisement. However, when he turned his head, Uchiha Madara was still sitting calmly in his chair, quietly sipping his drink. Why are you still drinking? I'll make 10 more for you later, Shaki urged anxiously. If we don't leave now, it'll be too late. Although they were not weak, they didn't want to give up the safe place they had prepared because of this unwarranted trouble. Don't worry, I'm fine, Uchiha Madara said calmly. What do you mean you're fine? Shaki was going crazy. Fine, of course, they were fine. Even Shaki, the weakest one present, could take care of that team of Marines. But what was the use? Sengoku and the 3 admirals were not far away. All for the sake of saving face and not moving from their spot? Don't worry, I told you, I'm fine, Uchiha Madara said calmly. Shaki was getting frustrated, but the Marine soldiers were gradually closing in. It was too late. Clang. The door of the bar was pushed open. Teams of elite Marines rushed in. "Have you seen any suspicious individuals here?" the Marine officer shouted sternly. Rayleigh widened his eyes, and Shaki looked shocked. Suspicious individuals? Yes, there was one. Right in front of them, the person quietly drinking his alcohol. But all the Marines, including the leading Marine Rear Admiral, completely ignored the person sitting there peacefully. Chapter 17. Did he really do it? The first is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 17. Did he really do it? First update, please collect and give flowers. Rayleigh and Shaki both had shocked expressions on their faces. Are you all blind to such a big person? Of course, they also knew that this was absolutely impossible. This time, the world government exerted pressure at every level. The Marines were driven crazy by them. Even the surveillance ship from the four emperors' side was ignored. The three admirals, plus Fleet Admiral Sengoku, all came over. It is even said that the supreme commander behind the military achievements, Kong Kong, has come to sit in the naval headquarters. If anything happens, he will immediately come to support. Didn't you see that the gray industries in Sabaody Archipelago were abandoned by the people above? They dare not provoke the crazy high-level officials at this time? Once there is a problem, as long as the Marines say, it's all because of a certain force causing trouble, otherwise we would have caught Uchiha Madara, they can bring down any noble except for the celestial dragons. Soldiers who can be excluded from the search at this time are definitely the elites among the elites of the Marines. Just by looking at the leader, you can tell. A vice admiral placed in the four seas is enough to guard a prosperous town or lead a group of warships to chase pirates. But here, he can only lead a small search team of dozens of people. How elite must he be? Uchiha Madara quietly sipped his wine, with a hint of crimson in his eyes. But everyone ignored the figure sipping wine, Genjutsu. The Genjutsu of the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan is definitely not something these small soldiers can break. In the Hokage world, even the Raikage would be instantly hit, let alone this group of people? Unless an admiral is brought in as the leader of the search, it is possible to break his Genjutsu, otherwise. Advertisement he. So that's how it is, this is your confidence. No wonder Sengoku has been searching for 4 days, and various auction houses have been raided, but they can't find your trace at all. Rayleigh took a deep breath and concealed his surprise in his eyes. Then immediately, it turned into a smile again. He had already retired and didn't care about pirates anymore. He spent his days drinking and even auctioned himself off when he was broke. Now his biggest interest is watching the new generation cause trouble for the Marines. Just imagine the scene where his old opponent is repeatedly forced by the celestial dragons, and Rayleigh can't help but smile. Shaki also widened her eyes. This man who appeared like a comet was unexpectedly so strong. The Marines were at a loss, but the leading vice admiral looked at Rayleigh and Shaki's expressions and felt that there might be a problem, so he immediately ordered the soldiers to search. Of course, Shaki was cunning and had long been prepared. She wasn't found in the search, at most, there were some minor issues, and she just had to pay a fine. In the end, the vice admiral waved his hand and led the team to withdraw. They still had a lot of work to do. Today, they still had to search Sabaody Archipelago 3 times. Now, I believe that you just came to see me. Rayleigh sat back in his seat and handed him a glass of wine. That's what I said from the beginning, Uchiha Madara said calmly. Sorry, now I truly believe it. What are you going to do after seeing me? Set sail. Advertisement. Rayleigh narrowed his eyes. It's not a good time to set sail now. The Marines are patrolling outside every day. Unless the Four Emperors' fleet suddenly appears, there is no way to escape. I have my ways. Uchiha Madara said calmly. Oh? Rayleigh's eyes flashed with curiosity. Can I go and take a look? Feel free. 30 minutes later. Rayleigh looked at the coast, dumbfounded, as he watched the Sea Kings in front of him. Those Sea Kings had blood-red Sharingan in their eyes. They looked fierce on the outside but obediently lowered their heads, allowing Uchiha Madara to walk into their mouths before diving into the sea. Rayleigh stood there in a daze for a long time before sighing. The newcomers these days are really terrifying. At the same time, on the 9 Snake Pirates ship. Although the news had already spread worldwide, there were no newsbirds in the calm belt where the 9 Snake Pirates were located. But today, they set sail again and obtained some news from the defeated pirate ship. Hancock looked at the news and the accompanying bounty poster in a daze. Did he really do it? Chapter 18. The second character template. Second more please collect flowers tickets. Chapter 18. Second character template. Second update, seeking collection of flowers and votes. Celestial dragons, they were actually killed. In fact, when Hancock hired Zhao Xu, she didn't expect him to succeed. She was just testing the waters, and she didn't care about that devil fruit anyway. But the result? Vengeance, I have already taken it. These words engraved in the Celestial Dragon's palace. The Marines don't know what's going on. Does Hancock not know either? He said this to her. The price paid is a bounty of up to 1.5 billion in the ongoing blockade of Sabaody Archipelago. Sandersonia and Marigold beside her also fell into silence. For a moment, the room was quiet. After they reacted, they looked at each other, tears filling their eyes. Tears fell and landed on the ground, making a muffled sound. Finally, the 3 of them embraced each other. Sister. The 2 sisters were in tears. Hancock herself shed tears. We don't have to worry anymore. And we have to thank our benefactor. During this time, Zhao Xu's clone had been obediently staying in the room assigned to him in the cabin. There was no other way. The clone was just a clone, and all his actions required the consumption of chakra. Although Uchiha Madara had a lot of chakra, even when he hadn't reached his peak, his chakra far surpassed that of ordinary ninjas. But after such a long time, Zhao Xu's clone also needed some stability and shouldn't move around randomly. So the group of tomboyish women from the 9 snakes could only helplessly look at the sign that said, "Sleeping, please do not disturb," and sigh. Really, why are men so good at sleeping? Men are always sleeping, how do they work? That's right, you've all touched men, but I haven't. The women of Ona Island chattered at Zhao Xu's door, while diligently recording in their notebooks. Advertisement: men are creatures that are very good at sleeping. Inside, Zhao Xu's clone. I don't want to sleep either, can't you all stop coming to bother me whenever you have time? Especially those tomboyish women who can run like horses with their arms, you almost made me disappear with your pinching. Suddenly, Zhao Xu's clone looked up. The women surrounding Zhao Xu's door heard footsteps behind them, and their expressions changed. Lady Hancock. What are you all doing here? Hancock said with a stern face. The crowd hesitated and looked at each other. Although they didn't know why this man was invited on board by Empress Hancock, the tradition of the 9 snakes made them a little uneasy. Finally, one person plucked up the courage and said, "We are curious about men." "Enough, go do what you need to do," Hancock said coldly. Yes. The women were scared and dispersed. Hancock, with a stern face, knocked on Zhao Xu's door and walked in with her sisters. Then, Shua. The 3 of them didn't hesitate and bent down at the same time. "Thank you," Hancock, with a proud personality and a bad temper, but now. She lowered her proud head. Zhao Xu's clone was taken aback, then smiled. "It's just work, nothing serious." "It's different." Hancock shook her head. "Just a few devil fruits, who would kill celestial dragons for such a thing?" "I would," Zhao Xu thought to himself. "It's not just about the fruits, it's also about showing off." "The reward obtained is far less than the cost paid." Hancock whispered, "You may not know, but your brother has already been given a bounty, 1.5 billion berries." Zhao Xu. "The main body is playing big. Now, as long as I give the Marines some information about your brother, I can get 100 million berries, while your information is worth 5,000 berries. Zhao Xu. "Well, so what? Let's learn the transformation technique." Advertisement. "This time, it's for me." Hancock's face turned slightly red, and she tried to turn her head away. "Anyway, the Kuja pirates will not betray their friends. If you need devil fruits, I still have some. Some devil fruits have strong abilities, while others are weak. As a country, the Kuja pirates naturally have reservations about 2 individuals who are not well known. In Hancock's treasury, there are still a few devil fruits that the Kuja pirates have collected. These treasures are already at a strategic level and were not revealed before. Although they are not as valuable as the flame fruit, they can easily be sold for several hundred million at an auction. Is that so? Then thank you. Zhao Xu's clone looked at the news with a smile. Truly worthy of the main body, leaving a message specifically at the Celestial Dragon's palace. Well done. Saying that, Hancock handed over a plate with 3 devil fruits on it. Although Zhao Xu hadn't seen the devil fruit catalog, he knew that these treasures kept by the Kuja pirates were definitely not inferior goods. What are you going to do next? Hancock hesitated and asked. Just take me to an island, I have a special way to contact my brother, Zhao Xu's clone said. Then, all right, Hancock hesitated for a moment and nodded. It was not difficult to send Zhao Xu to an island. Besides continuing to rob for the necessary supplies for the Kuja island, Hancock's purpose for this trip was to contact the world government and accept the title of Shichibukai. The world government, which was now in a sorry state due to the killing of the celestial dragons, needed strong individuals like Hancock to join them, and they could even make greater demands than before. So sending Zhao Xu to an island in the East Blue was nothing. It was a good opportunity to contact the Marines in the West Blue. After parting ways with Hancock, the clone held the 3 devil fruits in his hand and muttered, I hope there's no expiration or deterioration for devil fruits. Then he buried them in the ground on the island and covered them with earth style, submerging them. Fortunately, it was winter now, the weather was cold, and it was even snowing. The clone also wrapped the devil fruits in a hard earth style, so there shouldn't be any accidents. After that, with a bang, the clone disappeared from the spot. At the same time, the main body, who was still on the Sea Kings, trembled and received the memories of the clone during this time. Have the devil fruits been buried? Zhao Xu pondered for a moment, then stopped thinking about that question. Compared to the devil fruits, there was something more important that he needed to look at. Congratulations, host, for unlocking the second character template. Chapter 19 I am a hero out of interest. Chapter 19. I'm a hero driven by interest, third update, seeking collection of flowers and votes. In reality, Zhao Xu took the opportunity to see Rayleigh under the identity of Uchiha Madara mainly to show off. However, it seems that the effect is mediocre, as the authenticity only increased by 1%. Due to the system interface not displaying decimal places, Zhao Xu even suspects that this show-off only increased by a fraction of a percent. But it's better than nothing. it's not easy to find a good show-off opportunity like assassinating celestial dragons. It's estimated that there must be a deputy of the Pirate King acting as an audience to earn that 1% income. After all, he didn't make a big performance this time, nor did he use Uchiha Madara's lines from the original work. But there's actually a second character template. Zhao Xu squinted his eyes and glanced at his system. The authenticity of the first template, Uchiha Madara, is now 65%, not a whole number, nor a particularly meaningful number. So why did a second character template appear? Is it because Uchiha Madara has gained a certain level of fame worldwide? Is it because the authenticity has reached a certain level? Or is it just a coincidence, with the system randomly generating a new character template? Zhao Xu needs to have a clear understanding of all this. After all, there will always be some characters that are difficult to portray or have no practical use, or they may be difficult for him as the actor to accept. Like cross-dressing and more cross-dressing, but the second template is actually him. Zhao Xu looked at that name, his eyes narrowed. This is an invincible character. This character is full of distinctive traits and unique personality. In a certain sense, he is even more unique than the show-off class. But to portray this character, it seems, a good stage is also needed. Zhao Xu squinted his eyes and glanced at the nearby small island. This will do. Advertisement Daz Island is an ordinary island with a normal climate. Apart from its decent food production, there is nothing particularly unique about it. There are not 10,000, but 8,000 such small islands in East Blue. If there is one thing that sets it apart, it would be the Marine recruit training base on this island. And now, this training camp has been targeted by pirates. Kill, kill, kill. The ferocious pirates, with grim smiles on their faces, brandished their swords and charged forward. Under the leadership of the instructors, the Marine recruits resisted step by step, protecting the villagers behind them. However, they were at a disadvantage. Marine recruits were continuously seized by the ruthless pirates, who took the opportunity to kill them, reducing their numbers. Damn it. The lieutenant colonel of the Marine recruit training base gritted his teeth as he dealt with the enemy's attacks, his face looking grim. Seeing the recruits he had painstakingly trained being killed one by one, how could he, as their teacher, not feel heartbroken? But there was nothing he could do. The pirates who launched this attack were the Sword Demon with a bounty of 110 million. A powerhouse of this level is simply beyond what he, a lieutenant colonel, can withstand. In fact, if it weren't for the presence of many Marines in the training camp, it would have turned into a massacre long ago. This is East Blue, the weakest sea area, ha ha ha, I knew you would react like this. Sword Demon laughed heartily. With those villagers, let's see how you can escape. How could a Marine training base withstand billions of pirates? But they still attacked the village, forcing the training base to abandon its defense and go out for field operations. You despicable pirates. A slightly thin female recruit couldn't help but curse angrily. Tashigi, shut up. Focus on the battle, the lieutenant colonel shouted, his face grim. Pirates, do they care about what is despicable or not? HMPH, don't blame us for targeting you recruits. Who made that damn Zephyr guy always chase after us? Sword Demon revealed a sinister expression. If we kill all the recruits you've trained, that immortal old man will probably feel heartbroken, right? The Sword Demon pirates had been pursued by Zephyr for a long time, and even the vice captain was taken out by Zephyr. If it weren't for encountering a storm along the way, the entire pirate crew would probably have been wiped out. They didn't dare to retaliate against Zephyr, nor did they have the power to retaliate against Zephyr. Advertisement, but that doesn't mean they wouldn't dare to retaliate against others. Damn it. Tashiji's anger grew, but she was only 12 or 13 years old now, not even considered a Marine, just a recruit who had just started training. In her extreme anger, she swung her sword and attacked. Unfortunately, the Sword Demon sneered, and with a turn of his famous sword Shigur, he cut Tashiji's sword in half. The lieutenant colonel tried to intervene, but the Sword Demon seized the opportunity and instead struck him with a sword in the abdomen, instantly losing his combat power. Damn it. Tashigi gritted her teeth, looking at the sword in the Sword Demon's hand, a sense of frustration rising in her heart. Such a famous sword, held by someone as wicked as the Sword Demon. What a humiliation. She was someone who loved swords, and what she couldn't stand the most was famous swords being held by pirates and bandits. Unfortunately, in reality, even the swords in the hands of the Marines were not as numerous as those in the hands of pirates. Of course, Tashigi didn't need to care about these things now. Because the Sword Demon had already raised his sword Shigur, ready to completely kill this ignorant Marine recruit. The sword gleamed, and Tashigi couldn't help but close her eyes. But the expected pain did not come. Opening her eyes, she saw a person standing in front of her. It was an ordinary-looking person, wearing a strange yellow bodysuit, red gloves and boots, and a white cape. His face was blank, slightly droopy, and looked very silly. The only thing that stood out was his head, completely bald. Whether he shaved it himself or was naturally bald, she didn't know. But, you're not a Marine. You're a civilian? Sword Demon squinted his eyes. Who are you? He didn't even notice when this bald person appeared. The bald person was taken aback for a moment, then he heard him speak in a calm and strange tone. I'm Saitama, a hero driven by interest. Chapter 20. The Hero and the Little Lolita. Chapter 20. Heroes and Lolitas, first update, please collect and give flowers. Saitama, no need for further introduction, is the new character played by Zhao Xu. Taken from One Punch Man, and he is the protagonist in it. He is the true, absolute, and forever invincible existence in the world of One Punch. The superhero who can defeat all enemies with just one punch, that is One Punch Man, or perhaps I should say, Saitama. Of course, this power does not come without side effects. Saitama has gained absolute strength, but as a price, he has lost a lot, his hair and his emotions. In fact, Zhao Xu had already noticed the battles here, but even with Uchiha Madara's transformation technique, he could easily obtain the realism of Saitama 27 from the beginning. It took him a long time to rush over, not because he wanted to wait for a crucial moment to save the day or show off, but why is it so difficult to portray this bald guy's dumb expression? Zhao Xu cursed in his heart. I thought playing Saitama would be easy, with basically just one expression, but this expression is really troublesome. Uchiha Madara is fine, whether it's arrogance, anger, or calmness. He still falls under the category of normal human expressions. It's possible to simulate a good mindset, and even if it's a bit off, it won't be too far off. But Saitama, that silly and cute expression, he practiced in front of a mirror he found for a long time before barely grasping it. Even now, he still needs to constantly restrain his expression from changing, as if he were a superhero who truly doesn't care about anything in the world, standing in front of the sword demon. But unfortunately, the guy asked him, so naturally, he answered. I'm Saitama, a hero driven by interest. A calm voice, with a strange and relaxed tone. A hero? Ha ha ha. So there are still heroes. Whether it's the sword demon or the pirates around, they all burst into laughter. Heroes? How ordinary and vulgar. There are actually people who call themselves heroes? Even the Marines had a slightly strange expression. The Marines also have heroes, like Garp. Advertisement, but what kind of ghost is this, hero driven by interest? However, Saitama just looked around, then glanced at the Marines lying in a pool of blood. This, apologizing won't solve the problem anymore. For a moment, the air seemed to freeze. The sword demon widened his eyes, as if he couldn't believe what he heard. AP. Apologize? Then. Ha ha ha. All the pirates laughed wildly, including the sword demon himself. He turned to his subordinates and said, Did you hear what he said? It's an apology. The laughter of the subordinates became even more unbridled. The sword demon himself laughed the loudest, the next second. His expression suddenly changed. The maniacal laughter instantly turned incredibly ferocious. You bald. Before he could finish his words, Saitama punched him and sent him flying into the sky. The expressions of the people around seemed to freeze. The pirates' laughter seemed to be paused. The battlefield became extremely quiet, to the point where you could hear a pin drop. 3 minutes later, the sword demon's body finally fell, crashing to the ground and turning into a pile of flesh. At this moment, the pirates' faces changed drastically. A pirate with a bounty of over 1 billion was easily killed with just one punch? Ah! The pirates were terrified, screaming in fear as they scrambled to escape. Advertisement. The Marines were also stunned, staring blankly at Saitama, who still had an expressionless face as if he hadn't done anything, with a silly and cute expression. One punch, and a pirate with a bounty of over 1 billion was dealt with? Saitama lowered his head and looked at the pit created by the sword demon's body. I hope I don't have to compensate for this. If it's really necessary, I can dig some soil nearby and fill it up, right? At this time, the Marine captain finally reacted and quickly led the Marines to pursue the pirates. If they didn't chase now, the pirates would escape on their ship. Toshigi, on the other hand, stood there dumbfounded, with the sword demon's Ryukotsujin right in front of her. Saitama yawned and turned to leave. Wait, are you leaving? Toshigi finally reacted at this moment. Saitama nodded. If I don't leave, will you Marines feed me? Toshigi was stunned for a moment, then lowered her head. This Ryukotsujin is your spoils of war, you. I don't want it. Huh? I don't need it. If you like it, you can keep it. Saitama waved his hand and left directly. Wait. Toshigi subconsciously called out to Saitama. The hero you mentioned earlier. Saitama thought for a moment and said, in this world, there are countless villains, and those who dare to stand up and confront them are heroes. Then, he waved his hand and left, leaving behind a little girl holding a sword, watching his figure as he walked away. Chapter 21 Zephyr. I want to invite Saitama to join the Marine, second more please collect flowers tickets. Chapter 21. Zephyr. I want to invite Saitama to join Marine, second update, please collect and give flowers. In reality, Zhao Xu didn't stay long and left Daz Island directly. This was just a passing through place. If there wasn't a suitable place for Saitama to appear, he wouldn't have shown up here. And at the same time, host, Zhao Xu, character template. 1. Uchiha Madara, 65%, 2. Saitama, 33%, after Zhao Xu transformed into Saitama using the transformation technique, the realism increased to 25%. This is different from the previous situation where it was 30% after Uchiha Madara's transformation ended. Although the appearance is almost identical to Zhao Xu's impression, the final ratio is completely different. Is this because of the differences in their details? Or is it that Zhao Xu's transformation is slightly different from the original and the expressions and such are not accurate? Or is it that Zhao Xu's inner self is closer to Uchiha Madara, creating a significant difference with Saitama? Zhao Xu is not sure, but it is true that Saitama is more difficult to imitate than Uchiha Madara. In any case, the performance just now almost made his face cramp, so he decided to end it and retreat early. A plain expression is not easy to achieve. Each character has different abilities. Uchiha Madara has a complete ninjutsu system. After reaching 65%, Zhao Xu even possesses the Rinnegan and can activate wood style, significantly increasing his strength. On the other hand, Saitama only has physical abilities. Apart from physical and mental qualities, Saitama doesn't have any other abilities. He cannot harm any enemy, no matter who they are. No matter what kind of enemy it is, it's just a matter of one punch for him. He is a character who is invincible from the start. Of course, it doesn't mean that Saitama is invincible and that Zhao Xu, who has the Saitama template, is also invincible. Saitama is very strong, capable of smashing meteorites with one punch and freely moving in space. But compared to the big shots in Dragon Ball who can destroy planets in the universe, he is weaker, and he cannot compare to other conceptual things. However, judging from his own strength, Saitama's power is indeed extremely strong. Zhao Xu only needs this template to defeat a powerful individual with a bounty of over 1 billion with one punch, which fully demonstrates Saitama's abilities. Of course, there are also troubles. Advertisement. Saitama's setting is that he can defeat any enemy with one punch, so Zhao Xu shouldn't expect to fight against someone who can't be defeated with one punch. That would expose him. It's best to quickly improve Saitama's strength. Zhao Xu pondered for a moment and thought to himself. So far, the main income for the system's realism is Zhao Xu's own performance. Although it's hard to say how to achieve a composite character image, after all, there are 1,000 Hamlets in the eyes of 1,000 readers. But according to Zhao Xu's guess, the bigger the audience's reputation, the higher the level of pretentiousness, and the wider the spread, the greater the improvement obtained. Of course, it's not easy to find such a performance scene. Although devil fruits have a lower cost effectiveness and become less useful later on, they can quickly enhance Saitama's abilities in the early stages. So, go to the island where the clones disappear and bring back the devil fruit from there. Zhao Xu made a decision in his mind. Of course, for now, the most important thing is to find a Sea King to use as transportation. Saitama is a character who runs and rushes to the location of monsters on foot. Uchiha Madara is more reliable, and on the other side. The sword demon was killed, and the other small fry were no match for Marine. Just as the lieutenant led the Marines in pursuit, Marine's reinforcements finally arrived. "Teacher Zephyr, you're here," the lieutenant exclaimed in surprise. Zephyr nodded calmly. "I'm a bit late, but it seems like you guys don't need any help here." Marine wasn't foolish and naturally called for reinforcements early on. As the commanding officer of Marine's recruit training camp, it was only natural for Zephyr to come to support. Moreover, the attack by the sword demon was because of him. It's because a passing strong individual helped. Otherwise, the lieutenant didn't seek credit and directly mentioned Saitama's involvement. Upon hearing this, a glimmer of interest flashed in Zephyr's eyes. A hero? He had admired heroes since he was young. One day, when a bully was picking on a girl with a teddy bear, he gathered his courage and defeated the bully, solidifying his own beliefs. Marine, too, joined to become a hero. And in this current era of the great age of navigation, there were still people calling themselves heroes. "Advertisement, take me to see him," Zephyr immediately said. Yes. However, when Zephyr arrived at the location where Saitama had acted, Saitama's figure was naturally nowhere to be seen. "He's gone." Zephyr squinted his eyes, looking at the battlefield around him. Especially when his gaze fell on the nearly pulverized sword demon, he paused and said, "Impressive. Weird. Where's that person named Saitama?" The lieutenant furrowed his brows. Zephyr wanted to meet him, but why wasn't he here? He left. Tashigi, who was beside them, couldn't help but interject. He left. The lieutenant was taken aback, seeing the shigure in Tashigi's hand. "This sword is. It was given to me by Mr. Saitama." Tashigi was a bit nervous. Currently, she was just a recruit. Zephyr looked at Tashigi and asked, "Oh, he left, huh? Did he say anything?" Tashigi swallowed and said, "When I asked him what a hero is, Mr. Saitama said, in this world, there are countless evildoers, and those who dare to stand up and confront them are heroes." Upon hearing this, Zephyr fell into silence, then he burst into laughter. Laughter filled with joy. "Ha ha ha, yes, someone like that is naturally a hero, he's right." After laughing for a while, Zephyr finally calmed down from his hearty laughter. He looked at Tashigi and asked, "Your name is Tashigi, right? Are you willing to graduate from the recruit training camp and follow me?" "Can I?" Tashigi's face was filled with surprise. Zephyr was a hero of Marine, after all, of course, Zephyr smiled. On the other hand, the lieutenant seemed to have realized something and couldn't help but ask, "Teacher, what are you thinking?" Zephyr nodded without hesitation. For someone so full of righteousness, it would be a waste not to join Marine, wouldn't it? "I want to invite Saitama to join Marine." Chapter 22. I'm looking for you to reminisce about the old days. the third watch, please collect flowers. Chapter 22. I'm here to catch up with you. Third update, please collect and give flowers. The devil fruit was placed on an island in East Blue, and Zhao Xu was rushing towards that island. He was very relaxed, occasionally checking the news from the newsbird. The blockade of Sabodi Archipelago by the Marines is still ongoing. In fact, with his early departure, the blockade of Sabodi Archipelago has lost its meaning. But it's just a waste of time and money. However, Zhao Xu considered it and still sent out a clone, ready to show his face on an island in the Grand Line as Uchiha Madara, act a little arrogant and then disappear. Showing off is not the point is that the Marines have been blocking Sabodi Archipelago for almost a month. The people on the island are basically surviving on the supplies provided by the Marines. After all, with a month of blockade, no food can enter, and the stored food has long been exhausted. Even Rayleigh and Shaki are probably in the same situation. It's pitiful that the vice captain of the Pirate King can only eat the food allocated by the Marines. The purpose of Zhao Xu sending out a clone is to show the Marines that Uchiha Madara has long left Sabodi Archipelago, to prevent the continued blockade of the island and avoid complaints from Rayleigh and others. Of course, he estimated that the Marines also knew that it was impossible to find him. With a month-long blockade, it was just a show for the Celestial Dragons. They are not fools. They can see from the surveillance videos that Uchiha Madara transformed into a guard, naturally knowing Uchiha Madara's Grandmaster transformation technique, which can achieve a similar effect to the clone fruit. Want to catch such a person? Even the Buster Call won't work? First, you have to constantly check whether the soldiers of the Marines have been infiltrated, and then carefully inspect every person on Sabodi Archipelago. With this amount of work, unless Uchiha Madara is caught off guard, it is basically impossible to complete. Because except for some ability users who are not easy to impersonate, the three admirals, and powerful individuals like them, it is difficult for others not to be impersonated by Uchiha Madara. Advertisement don't even think about catching him. In fact, Jonin are also known for their versatile means of response. Although there are many devil fruits in the world of pirates, they can't compare to the versatility of ninjas. Even the second template Saitama that Zhao Xu possesses may be stronger than Uchiha Madara in terms of overall strength during his prime. But in terms of the functional power, Saitama is completely inferior to Uchiha Madara. Not to mention that Uchiha Madara's combat power is not weak at all. Zhao Xu headed straight to the hiding place of the devil fruit in East Blue, the weakest sea, so he didn't need to worry about anything. He even chose to use Saitama's face all the way to show off, punching any pirates he encountered. Even the Sword Demon, who had a bounty of over 100 million and specially came to the training base in East Blue from the Grand Line, was knocked out by Zhao Xu with one punch. There were no opponents that could not be solved with one punch. After all, this is just the weakest East Blue. Even the Nine Snakes thought that East Blue was the weakest. Even if they actively approached the Marines, they would not be tricked or calculated by the Marines. Soon, Zhao Xu arrived at the island of his target and dug out his devil fruit. It was still intact, without any changes, no sprouting, no rooting. Maybe it was because of the winter. By the way, can devil fruits be planted? And, can devil fruits spoil? Forget it, anyway, I won't eat it, so it doesn't matter to me. Zhao Xu glanced at the devil fruit and immediately let the system absorb it. Then he added the energy to the Saitama template. Host. Zhao Xu. Possessing character templates. Advertisement. 1. Uchiha Madara, 65%, 2. Saitama, 43%. The growth of the Saitama template was very fast. The 3 devil fruits increased it by 7 percentage points, and the show-off along the way added another 3 or 4 points. The main reason is that the strength of the opponents has little impact on Saitama's show-off. After all, in the world of one punch, no matter who it is, Saitama can solve them with one punch. The pirates in East Blue, whether weak or strong, cannot escape this range, so it doesn't have much impact. Speaking of which, the country next to this island seems to be called Goa Kingdom. Zhao Xu squinted his eyes. At the same time, 2 marine warships sailed straight ahead. One was the most traditional marine warship, with almost no decorations or modifications. But the other one had a dog's head biting a bone as the figurehead. Garp, why are you here? Zephyr said. I came to see my grandson in Windmill Village. Garp held his nose and ate a senbei. What about you? Why are you here? Zephyr's eyes turned. If this old B********** Garp knew about Saitama, would he compete with him? Although they are all Marines, who wouldn't want a promising talent when they see one? So Zephyr calmly said, I'm here to catch up with you. Really? Garp looked strange. Zephyr himself is a very dedicated and serious person. Although he is very gentle to his students, he would never do something like catching up with old friends. Chapter 23 3 Little Ghost Heads Chapter 23 3 Little Rascals, First Update, Seeking Collection of Fresh Flowers. Goya Kingdom, City Center, Central Street. East Blue is the weakest sea and also the calmest sea. Although it cannot be said to be completely peaceful, most people live and work in peace. Or perhaps. The huge surrounding walls separate the entire central city from the outside. No matter how chaotic it is outside, it is still very peaceful inside, with the sound of morning songs and evening strings. A peculiar man wearing a yellow tight-fitting suit and a white cloak walked in like this, dazed and stunned. He found a corner on the street and sat down, still wearing that blank expression. Intel. They're here. Zhao Xu's eyes flashed with a glint, but it quickly disappeared, returning to that silly and cute look. Then, with a crash, the glass shattered, and the figures of 3 children holding water pipes fell from the sky. Before they could land, angry shouts came from upstairs. Free meal. Quickly catch those damn kids. However, the 3 children were very agile, stepping on walls, clothes racks, and other objects, landing safely. Ace, let's go. Yeah. The food in this place is delicious, let's come again next time. Too bad, I could have eaten 3 more bowls of ramen. After saying that, the 3 little rascals glanced at each other and immediately ran away. Because based on their experience of eating free meals, the security officer was already rushing over with a stick. Saitama squinted his eyes and looked at the 3 little guys. Ace, Sabo, and Luffy. Just as the 3 little guys expected, the security officer had arrived and was shouting, "Don't let them escape, who will help catch them?" But the people living here, who would be so kind-hearted? Sabo ran the fastest, shouting, "Get out of the way! Get out of the way! Don't block the way!" The 3 of them quickly escaped, whether it was by chance or not, they happened to rush towards Zhao Xu's direction. Advertisement Zhao Xu had long transformed into Saitama's appearance, pretending to be silly and cute, saying, "Free meal?" Then, standing in the middle of the road, they faced each other. Luffy covered his mouth, as if he hadn't finished eating the ramen in his mouth. "Get lost, Baldy over there," Sabo shouted loudly at Saitama. Ace also yelled, "We are fierce pirates, if you provoke us." Baldy. Saitama's mouth twitched. 3 minutes later. He dragged the trio with swollen and bruised faces back to the restaurant. The damages are 26 bowls of ramen in 1 glass. The boss calculated bit by bit. Damn it, if it weren't for you, we wouldn't have been caught. Sabo's face was full of dissatisfaction. Damn Baldy. Ace gritted his teeth. Saitama narrowed his eyes. Ace's mouth twitched, he touched the swollen area on his face, and lowered his head. Luffy. He's still busy finishing what's in his mouth. It's amazing how shamelessly you guys can even eat for free. Saitama frowned and said, "Don't do this next time. Even though you're kids, it's not good behavior. Mind your own business, Baldy." Saitama. Bang. Bang. Bang, after giving Ace and Sabo twice as many bruises on their faces. Eating for free is not a big problem, and there won't be any major punishment. But considering how often the 3 of them eat, they'll probably be taught a lesson. Of course, they probably won't be obediently educated like that. Zhao Xu continued to disguise himself as Saitama and left the city. Luffy, Ace, and Sabo, the 3 future influential figures, are like this now. Advertisement of course, Zhao Xu has no right to say anything about them. He is currently quite poor, whether it's Uchiha Madara or Zhao Xu, neither of them are wealthy characters, nor have they plundered any pirates. On the other hand, Saitama has killed many pirates in this identity, but unfortunately, this identity doesn't allow him to receive any rewards. By the way, how did Saitama survive for so long in the original work? What does he do for a living? Zhao Xu thought for a moment. Saitama seems to have no profession, and being a hero is just a hobby. After becoming a professional hero, it seems that he can receive a salary from the Hero Association every month. Before becoming a professional hero, did he rely on government relief funds? Zhao Xu. As the strongest man in the world, you're living off government relief funds? No wonder you get so excited when you see supermarket discounts. From this perspective, Saitama's determination is indeed terrifying. Anyway, with such strong power, it's absolutely impossible for Zhao Xu to live such a difficult life. Not to mention becoming a villain or a robber, at the very least, he would use his power to legally get rich. However, although Zhao Xu doesn't have money, he doesn't worry about food. Near the Geoise Kingdom, close to Windmill Town, there's Mount Kolbo, where there is plenty of food in the mountains and forests. Of course, he still needs to deal with the 3 little troublemakers above his head. Let's do it, Sabo shouted loudly, and the 3 of them jumped down from the trees. Do you think you can escape? Real pirates seek revenge? Go to hell, Baldy. The brave pirates have come back for revenge. Saitama. Oh. 3 seconds later. Saitama looked at the dead bodies on the ground and sighed softly. What exactly did you come here for? Chapter 24. It's on Garp. Chapter 24. Garp gets tricked, second update, seeking collection of fresh flower votes. Damn it. Sabo and the others were lying on the ground, their imposing presence just a moment ago completely gone. Sabo gritted his teeth, trying to get up but unable to. Don't think we'll give up like this. Luffy held his head. Damn it, I'm made of rubber, so why does this person's punches hurt so much? Ace, also holding his head, tried to get up a few times but eventually gave up and angrily said to Saitama, "True pirates don't give up because of a few setbacks. Just you wait." Saitama rubbed his chin. "How did you guys end up behind me?" "Of course, we've been following you from the beginning," Luffy said confidently. Saitama replied, "If I remember correctly, you guys were eventually punished to wash dishes at that restaurant to pay off your debt. So why did we have time to follow you?" Luffy and the others remained silent. In the next second, their bodies trembled. Once again, they were captured and sent back to the town. Zhao Xu still wore Saitama's disguise, preparing food and occasionally going to places like the Garbage Mountain to fight pirates. The pirates here were not wealthy, and they might have even fallen to the point of robbing children. But they still had some wealth. Zhao Xu didn't take any of it. Saitama's character wasn't the type to defeat enemies and take their treasure. Instead, he would give the spoils to the police. Of course, here, they were the law enforcement officers. Although Zhao Xu felt that the law enforcement officer with a belly bigger than a pregnant woman might not be so kind as to return the treasures he brought, it didn't matter. If that law enforcement officer caused trouble, a punch would be enough. However, Zhao Xu discovered one of Saitama's advantages: his physical fitness was too strong. Of course, that was part of his character. But Zhao Xu found that even if he lay in the forest without any preparation, no small insects would bother him. He once saw a mosquito trying to suck his blood, but after squatting on his arm for half an hour, it flew away without taking a drop of blood. Thinking about it, it makes sense. Advertisement. Even attacks that can shatter planets can't harm Saitama in the original work, let alone mosquitoes. Although this defense is not very useful, at least in terms of Saitama's realism, it's not very useful. When facing enemies that are too strong, defense is not enough. When facing enemies that are too weak, there's no need for defense. But this made Zhao Xu a little more comfortable staying in the forest. Of course, if it weren't for occasional interruptions. We're back. Die, you baldy. Thud. Thud. After a series of punches and kicks, Saitama calmly yawned, brushed his teeth with a makeshift toothbrush made of twigs, and began his chivalrous acts for the day. Oh no, I should say, heroic activities. And behind him, lying quietly on the ground, were 3 bruised and swollen little brats. Darn it, another failure. He's too strong, feels just like my grandfather. So what should we do? A true pirate never lets a grudge go. The 3 of them looked at each other, unsure. Finally, Sabo, who had a better head on his shoulders, thought for a moment and said, "How about this? We've been going at him directly these few times, so next time, let's set a trap." Good idea. That's a great plan. That guy goes to the Garbage Mountain, Central Street, and Windmill Village every day. Let's set up traps along the way. Once he falls into our trap, we'll go in for revenge. The 3 little rascals exchanged glances and nodded in agreement. And so, they began their busy preparations. Ace chopped trees, Luffy carried things, Sabo set traps. After working for a long time, they finally dug a big hole, surrounded by various rolling logs and other contraptions. The 3 little guys were tired, so they decided to sleep on tree branches. And the next day. Advertisement: "Ah, who dug this hole here?" A cry of surprise, followed by the sound of someone falling into the hole. This startled the 3 of them awake. It's over by the trap. We caught him, haha, we truly are geniuses. Grabbing the nearby water pipe, Ace and Sabo excitedly pulled Luffy towards the trap. When they arrived, without thinking twice, they started smashing with the water pipe. Meanwhile, Luffy yawned, rubbed his eyes, and then saw the person inside the trap. Huh. The guy who fell into the hole seemed taller, stronger, and had a slightly older voice than the bald guy. Upon closer inspection, his face seemed somewhat familiar. Then, an old man with purple hair walked over. He looked at the scene in front of him with a strange expression and said, "Garp, what are you doing?" Garp. Ace and Sabo froze. The next second, Garp grabbed their necks. "It's nothing, just felt like teaching my grandsons a lesson. Zephyr, wait for me over there." Saying that, he dragged the 2 of them into the jungle. Soon after, cries of pain could be heard from inside. "You damn brats. Wait, you old fart, we weren't targeting you, we wanted to deal with someone else. Stop talking nonsense, both of you bite down and endure my love-filled iron fist." Chapter 25 Saitama, you might be able to bring Uchiha Madara to justice. The 3rd change is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 25. Saitama, you might be able to bring Uchiha Madara to justice. 3rd update, please collect fresh flower votes. So, what you guys want to deal with is a very strong bald guy. Garp sat on the ground, eating senbei. Yeah, that's right. That B*************** D is really strong. The trio with swollen faces obediently sat on the ground, nodding one after another. As for why it was a trio, it was probably because Luffy saw Sabo and Ace getting beaten up, so he shouted at Garp, "Grandpa, you're targeting our pirate trio." Then Garp beat him up even harder than Sabo and the others. "Just because we ate a free meal, why are you treating us like this?" Luffy complained. Eating a free meal. Garp twitched his mouth, not good. Sabo and Ace's expressions changed, and they grabbed Luffy, wanting to run. However, you guys ate a free meal. Instead of being good Marines, you're here doing shady things. Zephyr, who had been listening to their conversation, brightened up and walked over. "The bald guy you're talking about, is he a young man wearing yellow clothes?" You know him." Garp turned his head. "Sort of." Zephyr neither confirmed nor denied. Interesting. As old friends, Garp naturally knew that Zephyr didn't come to reminisce. So the target must be that guy in the yellow clothes. Thinking about the information he heard from Ace and the others, it did pique his interest. Hero activities. Enforcing justice. Garp smirked. Old friend, I suddenly want to meet that masked kid who's a complete stranger. Is that so? Then let's go together. Zephyr squinted his eyes. This person couldn't let that old immortal Garp snatch him away. Advertisement. In reality, Zhao Xu was diligently carrying out hero activities, and it was even starting to bring about changes in the country. The Goa kingdom was extremely polarized, with one side being a garbage dump and the other side being the noble area. The laws were not as perfect as in Zhao Xu's previous life, and various underground organizations, bandits, and pirates were rampant. Moreover, these underground organizations had close ties with the nobles. If it weren't for Zhao Xu basically wiping out all the enemies he encountered every time he went out and living in a remote mountain, national level figures would have probably come knocking on his door long ago. But even so, Zhao Xu didn't care. There was nothing that couldn't be solved with a punch. If there was, then 2 punches. Of course, Zhao Xu wasn't constantly engaged in hero activities, and even Saitama himself didn't run around every day. Most of the time, he watched TV. Of course, there was no TV now, so Zhao Xu had to increase his time spent outside a little. But now he was lying in the temporary house he had made. Suddenly, Zhao Xu narrowed his eyes. They're here. Then, the next second, Saitama's expression returned to his usual silly and innocent look. Not long after, there was a knocking sound on the shoddily made door. Hey, bald brat inside, come out now. Of course, there were also the voices of 2 old men arguing. Garp, why are you shouting so loudly? It's just how I am, is that not okay? You're just looking for trouble, what's it to you? Saitama yawned and casually opened the door. Then, his dead fish eyes met Garp's spirited gaze. 3 seconds later. Saitama, hello, my house doesn't need any news. Garp. Advertisement. Zephyr. Garp. We're not here to sell news. Saitama. Oh, I don't need daily necessities, milk, or insurance either. Everyone. That's not what this is about. Seeing signs of Garp going berserk, Zephyr immediately stepped forward and said, your name is Saitama, right? Yeah, I'm Zephyr. Now you know, right? No, I have no idea. Zephyr. Cough cough cough, I used to be the Admiral of Headquarters, and now I'm the Marines' chief instructor. Zephyr also stopped being polite and straightforwardly said, I came this time to invite you to join the Marines. Although it completely hit the mark of his intentions, Zhao Xu still controlled Saitama and squeezed out a puzzled expression. The Marines? That's right, Zephyr said without hesitation, if you want to enforce justice, the best thing you can do is join the Marines. With your strength, you can definitely become a powerful Marine. It's not impossible for you to become a Marine Admiral. Admiral? Garp looked at Zephyr with a surprised expression. Does this Saitama really have that much potential? Even Ace and the others looked at the bald man in front of them with astonishment. They had also heard of the title of Marine Admiral. Before Zephyr could finish, he directly took out a newspaper from his pocket and stuffed it into Saitama's hand, saying, in this era, evil forces are rampant. Look, a few days ago, a villain named Uchiha Madara appeared, disrupting the order and causing harm in the world. If it's you, maybe you can bring this man to justice. Zhao Xu. Chapter 26. Zephyr's show operation. The first change asks for collection of flowers. Chapter 26. Zephyr's cunning plan. First update, seeking collection of fresh flower votes. Zephyr had confidence in his ability to judge people. This guy named Saitama must be a person full of justice. Using heinous criminals to attract him to join the Marines is the best choice. Look, even though he had a blank expression since I entered, his expression has changed somewhat. Time to seize the opportunity, Zephyr thought to himself. Without hesitation he said, young man, you should know that the Marines' intelligence system is supported by the world government. If you join the Marines, you will have accurate information and be able to combat more criminals. Look at those pirates in the Trash Mountain. They are now hiding in the shadows. It will be difficult for you to catch them in a short time. But with good intelligence, it will be different. For example, Uchiha Madara. Despite his insane attack on Marijoy, the Marines have already captured some of his locations. If you help, we can definitely catch this heinous criminal. Zhao Xu. His clone has been discovered. But this is not surprising. Before he split into a clone, he had already arranged for him to leak his whereabouts at the right opportunity, so that the Marines could lift the blockade on Sabodi Archipelago. However, how did Zephyr come up with this plan to bring me, the real me, to capture my clone? Cough, maybe you're right, but I don't want to take orders from others, Saitama calmly said. After becoming a Marine, you have to obey the orders of your superiors, right? I am a hero driven by interest, and I can't accept the hierarchical relationship you have. It's okay. Zephyr patted his chest and said, I can arrange for you to be under my command. I won't give you any orders on a daily basis. You can make your own judgments based on the intelligence we provide. The salary in the Marines is also good, and there are bonuses for defeating pirates. You won't have to live in a straw hut anymore. Upon hearing these words, Saitama's eyes lit up. The next second, he appeared in front of Zephyr, earnestly shaking his hand. I agree to join the Marines. Zephyr. There's something strange about this kid. Oh well. Old man, this kid is pretty strong. Garp squinted his eyes. He didn't notice his speed just now, and he suddenly appeared around him. Of course, why else would I come all the way here? Zephyr laughed, not caring. TCH, I knew you didn't come all the way here just to catch up with me. Garp rolled his eyes. Advertisement, of course, he didn't ask Zephyr for anyone else. Although Saitama performed well and had a strong sense of justice, the promises Zephyr made were not simple. A Marine who doesn't follow orders but only listens to assignments. You should know that the Marines, fundamentally, are the military force of the world government. What if he doesn't follow orders? He can't provide that kind of treatment. Even the high treatment Zephyr offered was abnormal. After a moment of silence, Garp remembered Zephyr's words when he voluntarily stepped down from the position of Admiral and became a recruit training instructor. Garp, I want to train a hero. Is this the hero you have chosen? Garp thought to himself. After deciding to join the Marines, Zephyr quickly took Saitama onto his warship. Of course, as a newly joined Marine, Zephyr only gave Saitama the rank of captain. Marine ranks are important, but not that important. In the future world conscription, the relatively unknown and unremarkable Green Bull and Fujitora can instantly become admirals. Of course, that's because it is led by the world government. Having the freedom to act without having to obey orders comes at a high cost. Zephyr is not one of the 5 elders, so he doesn't have that kind of authority. Giving him the rank of captain is just right, neither too big nor too small. He can lead a ship on his own without causing any problems due to excessive power. However, some people are worried. Zephyr, is it okay for you to do this? A lieutenant commander couldn't help but ask. We're not familiar with this guy named Saitama, right? Yeah, Zephyr nodded. Then why are you giving him so much power? The lieutenant commander frowned. As soon as they join the Marines, they become ensigns, and with the freedom to act. One wrong move and it could become a stain on Zephyr's reputation. That kid is not a bad person, don't worry, Zephyr smiled and said. How do you know? The lieutenant commander couldn't help but ask. It seems like this is the first time we've met him, right? Doing good deeds may be the result of some ulterior motive, Zephyr smiled and said, but having such strong power and building a house in the deep mountains. That's not something a bad person would do. Advertisement. The lieutenant commander was skeptical, but he no longer denied it. On the other hand, Zephyr smiled, remembering his conversation with Saitama earlier. Garp's grandson is a big problem. Luffy and Red Hair have an unclear relationship, and the other two don't seem like obedient types, especially Ace. Having come this far, he vaguely discovered something. But he didn't consider the fact that Ace and the others haven't done anything wrong, and also Garp's face. It was because of Garp's generosity that he cleanly gave up on Saitama. But Saitama has spent more time with Ace than he has. Wouldn't he notice anything? When Zephyr subtly asked Saitama on the warship, Saitama responded with a question. Ace, did he make a big mistake? No, then that's it. Saitama looked at him with his silly face. If he didn't make a mistake, why would you arrest him? Of course, it seems like he will become a pirate in the future, but at that time, it's up to the me of that time to catch him. With these words, Zephyr fell silent. After a moment of silence, a figure approached from the side. What's wrong, Ensign? Zephyr looked at the bald man and couldn't help but smile. This marine uniform always feels uncomfortable. Can I change back to my previous clothes? Saitama adjusted the collar on his neck and asked. Whatever you want, I said you have the freedom to choose, Zephyr said. Oh, thank you, old man. Saitama smiled. By the way, where are we going now? Upon hearing this, Zephyr's face showed a hint of seriousness. To the Grand Line. The Marines have a major operation, and I'm taking you to capture Uchiha Madara. Saitama. Sigma. Winking face. This old man really went for this crazy move in the end. Chapter 27. Should you tell them? Chapter 27. Should we tell them? Second update, seeking collection of fresh flower tickets. Zephyr's warship was very large, and Zhao Xu couldn't tell the model, but it was the latest type of marine ship that could cross the calm belt. It couldn't be mass-produced, only produced on a small scale, and was extremely expensive. So everyone who was assigned to this type of ship was a high-ranking marine. It can only be said that Zephyr's ships are truly remarkable. The interior space was very large. Even though they were confined to the ship and couldn't move around like on land, Zhao Xu didn't feel bored. At most, he felt a bit nervous because he had to maintain Saitama's appearance all the time. However, there were still some small incidents during the voyage. Pirates were a specialty of this great age of navigation. Especially after crossing the calm belt and arriving at the Grand Line, pirates were as numerous as hairs on an ox. Every time they encountered pirates, Zhao Xu didn't actively rush out, but calmly and slowly walked over. When he arrived, the other Marines would either be victorious or at a disadvantage. He didn't need to take action for victory, but when they were at a disadvantage, he quickly took action and defeated the enemy's leader with one punch. This also made Zephyr secretly nod in approval. Giving new recruits and soldiers a chance, although that person named Saitama lacked social skills, he would definitely become a good Marine. Furthermore, Saitama had a gentle temperament and didn't even wear Marine uniforms, so he didn't put pressure on people. Over time, not only Zephyr, but even the Marines became familiar with this excessively strong bald man. Lord Saitama. Toshigi looked excitedly at Saitama as he jumped back onto the warship from the enemy pirate ship. You've worked hard. Saitama still had a silly and cute expression as he looked at Toshigi. Who are you? Don't you remember? I'm Toshigi. Toshigi stood on her tiptoes and handed Saitama the sword she had. You gave me this sword back then. Oh, it's you. Saitama nodded. Why are you on the ship? Zephyr saw potential in me and let me come on board, Toshigi said excitedly. Being recognized by Zephyr was no small matter. It could be said that her future was boundless. Moreover, to have the qualifications to board the ship, she would have to wait at least 3 more years. Advertisement, however, now she was being recognized ahead of time thanks to Saitama's influence. However, a child this young is also a Marine. Saitama frowned. Doesn't the world government have a complete conscription law? At the very least, they should prohibit minors under 18 from joining the military. Toshigi. Skipping the middle interlude. Without hesitation, Zephyr's ship sailed towards a certain island in the Grand Line. Zhao Xu could tell that the closer they got to the target island, the more ships appeared, gathering here. Obviously, the Marines were also going all out. When they got close enough, Marine soldiers immediately came to report and asked Zephyr to attend a meeting. As a newcomer highly regarded by Zephyr, Zhao Xu was also brought along by him. As soon as they walked in, Zhao Xu's eyes narrowed. Kizaru, Akainu, Aokiji, and Fujidora. Just by Zhao Xu's recognition, there were already 4 people. And the person sitting in one of the main seats was not wearing Marine uniform, but wearing a mask that obstructed the view. The world government? Zhao Xu squinted his eyes and thought to himself. The world government is very powerful. Just the Marines under the world government have 3 admirals, Garp, Zephyr, Sengoku, and other powerful forces. If someone were to say that the world government doesn't have any strong individuals, Zhao Xu would be the first to not believe it. Obviously, the person in front of him should be a strong individual affiliated with the world government. Everyone gathered together, and as one of the few who wasn't wearing Marine uniform, Saitama attracted everyone's attention. Zephyr-sensei, who is this person? Akainu frowned and asked. He's a recruit I just took in from the Marines. You don't need to worry about him, Zephyr smiled and said, we're here to defeat that person named Uchiha Madara. It seems like you value him a lot. Everyone also chose to accept it, because the current focus was not on this newcomer, but on the Avenger Uchiha Madara. Advertisement. According to our intelligence, Uchiha Madara is staying on this island. Crane pointed at the map with his cane and said in a low voice, so I've decided to disperse our forces, with 3 admirals and several experts as support, slowly surround him. On the map, several warships were drawn around an island, showing a trend of encirclement towards the island. The configuration of the Buster Call consisted of 5 vice admirals, 10 rear admirals, nearly 10,000 elite marines, and 10 top-level warships. However, at this moment, there were already about 5 admiral-level combatants in this place alone. Crane's plan was simple and straightforward. Surround the island, slowly approach, with admiral-level combatants as the core, and force that man out. If he doesn't show himself once they reach the border of the island, then they will use the Buster Call to completely cover the island. After all, there is only one small town here. It's enough to send 1 admiral to bring it under control, and they can inspect it slowly in the future. Mr. CP0 of the world government, do you have any objections to my command? Crane finished explaining and faced the strong individual from CP0. If I have to say, there is one thing. The person was not polite either. Their hypocritical voice came through the mask. I'm curious why you still want to bring in the villagers. Don't you know that those villagers could also be transformed by Uchiha Madara? That's just a matter of probability. Our Marine's responsibility is to protect the citizens, Crane calmly said, and you can't be sure that Uchiha Madara is 100% on the island. It goes against our duty to eliminate all the villagers based on a possibility. The intelligence came from my CP0, it's absolutely true. Our intelligence officer saw Uchiha Madara enter. Bringing in the villagers is not a troublesome matter. Watch them closely and temporarily detain the villagers in sea stone cages. There's a high possibility of capturing Uchiha Madara. The 2 of them exchanged words, their tones calm but with opposing views. And behind them, you see, without the Marine's intelligence network, it would be so difficult to find such a wicked criminal, right? Zephyr recommended Marine to Saitama, and with the cooperation of Marine experts, we can better surround him. Joining the Marines is definitely the best decision in your life. This time, that Uchiha Madara will definitely not escape. Zephyr said with unwavering confidence. Zhao Xu. Should I tell him that just a moment ago, my clone had already completed the mission and dissipated on its own? Chapter 28. A big wave of Uchiha Madara strikes. The third change is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 28. Uchiha Madara launches a massive attack. Third update, seeking collection of fresh flower votes. Honestly, Marine's intelligence system is indeed very strong, and the CPs are not lacking in being a government-established intelligence organization. Although there may be reasons why some clones were not deliberately hidden, the fact that they were able to discover a powerful ninja shows their strength. But the problem is, all my clones have dispersed, so who are you guys trying to stop? Zhao Xu's mouth twitched as he watched the Marines in the conference hall slowly discuss the details and quickly establish a complete and comprehensive battle plan centered around the crane. Beside him, Zephyr looked proud as he said to Zhao Xu, Saitama, look, this is the power of an organization. Zephyr, at this moment, has not yet experienced the greatest transformation in his life, and he hasn't even lost his arm. But, what power does this organization have? My clones have all returned. The plan is set. The admirals dispersed and took their positions, and Zephyr brought Zhao Xu back to his own ship. Be careful, that man named Uchiha Madara is not an ordinary villain, Zephyr warned, then said, get ready for battle. Zhao Xu. Well, as long as you guys are happy. But, what should I do in this situation? After returning to his room, Zhao Xu fell silent for a moment, then. He released the transformation technique, transformed again, and began forming hand seals. Battle begins. The crane shouted, and her voice spread through the Den Den Mushi. The next second, countless warships began rapidly approaching the island. The three admirals, Zephyr, and the strong individuals from the world government all suddenly started moving, converging towards the center of the island. They needed to force the survivors into one direction and gather them in a separate lifeboat for future inspection. Advertisement at the same time, there was another important task, finding Uchiha Madara. Over a dozen vice admirals manned the ships, and anyone who approached without proper identification would be treated as an enemy and killed. 5 admiral-level combatants, over a dozen vice admiral-level combatants. This level of power is already enough to go head-to-head with the 4 Emperor's pirate crews. The crane took command in the center, leading the operation. Under her command, the battle proceeded in an orderly manner, steadily and without any loopholes. This was also one of the reasons why the members of CP0 agreed to her plan. Now, let's see where Uchiha Madara will make his move from. The crane picked up a cup of tea, took a sip, and her eyes became deep and profound. With such a tightly woven net, even if he can transform, he won't be able to escape. Of course, the crane did not underestimate Uchiha Madara. The Holy Land Marijoy, which had never been attacked before, became a disgrace to the celestial dragons in the hands of this man. With such an existence, anything is possible. Suddenly, a Den Den Mushi rang out abruptly. Vice Admiral Crane, this is Doberman. I have spotted Uchiha Madara's figure. He's here. The crane narrowed her eyes and, with a speed completely different from her aging body, grabbed the Den Den Mushi. Prepare for battle, hold him back at all costs. I will immediately dispatch reinforcements to you. As she spoke, the other Den Den Mushis were already being dialed. Around Vice Admiral Doberman, there were still 4 or 5 Vice Admirals, enough to hold Uchiha Madara back for a short time. Then immediately recall the Admiral-level combatants and attack him together. Stallo Berry, this is Crane. Doberman has discovered Uchiha Madara. I order you to go and reinforce immediately. I can't leave. What? Are you joking? Not joking, there is also a Uchiha Madara here. What? Advertisement. The crane was instantly stunned. Almost the next second, the Den Den Mushis around her started ringing one after another. Chief of Staff, this is Squirrel. I have spotted Uchiha Madara's figure. I am Gomiru. Uchiha Madara has appeared. Send reinforcements quickly. Uchiha Madara is trying to break through from my side. I will do my best to hold him back. Admiral, come over immediately. In a certain direction, Uchiha Madara's figure has been spotted. A series of phone calls sounded, and the crane stood dumbfounded in the command center. How is this possible? This operation brought a total of 17 vice admirals. However, now almost every vice admiral was calling. But the next second, she suddenly reacted. Is it some kind of ability again? Contact the admirals for reinforcements. Maintain formation. I don't believe that every Uchiha Madara is so strong. There must be a real one. The marines below immediately dialed the Den Den Mushis, but... Chief Crane. Seichin, you guys come back quickly. There are over a dozen Uchiha Madaras appearing around us, trying to break through. I have already ordered the vice admirals to hold them back, but we need you. In front of us, there is also a Uchiha Madara. What? In the center of the island, in front of the 5 Marine Admiral-level combatants. Uchiha Madara stood clad in brownish-red armor, his hands crossed. A strong killing intent surged forth. Come, let the game begin. Chapter 29. Everyone loses color. The first is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 29. Everyone's expression changes. First update, seeking collection of fresh flower votes. Uchiha Madara, does he also have the ability to create clones? There are still over 10 Uchiha Madara on Vice Admiral's side? If those over there are clones, then this one here should be the original. Kizaru squinted his eyes, his tone strange. The aura of this person in front of him is even stronger than the one he had seen before. If this is a clone, Kizaru would never believe it. Even if it's 5 against 1, we will still achieve victory. Akainu clenched his fist, a murderous intent surging. Uchiha Madara, you will die. Zephyr threw off his coat, revealing his muscular body. Don't say we're despicable, you're the dangerous one here. The powerful members of CP0 slightly lowered their bodies. After all, you are Uchiha Madara. I won't say you're despicable. Uchiha Madara's mouth curled up, his fingers forming seals. 5 against 1, it's just right for a game. In the next second, clones made of trees suddenly grew under his feet. And then, 5 people. 5 people. 5 people. 5 people. 5 people. A total of 25 clones, divided into teams of 5, stood in front of each marine powerhouse. The admirals' faces change, looking at the 5 individuals standing in front of them in disbelief. This is what it means to be 5 against 1, don't say I'm despicable. Uchiha Madara looked proudly at everyone. After all, you are marine admirals. For a moment, all 5 of them changed their expressions. The ability to create clones, can it be used like this? Feeling the presence of one clone after another, everyone's faces were filled with seriousness. Strong. Very strong. Although they are not as imposing as the original, they possess a power close to that of an admiral. Advertisement Zhao Xu stood in the center with a proud posture, his hands crossed. In fact, after several performances, he was already very close to Uchiha Madara's full power. Host. Zhao Xu. Character template. 1. Uchiha Madara, 67%. 2. Saitama, 48%. 80% is equivalent to his prime, and 67% is only slightly lower than his prime. Currently, Zhao Xu's Uchiha Madara has the Wood Style and Sage Mode abilities. The clones just now were Wood Style clones. Compared to Uchiha Madara in his prime, Zhao Xu only lacks the Rinnegan and being the 10 Tails Jinchuriki. With Sage Mode, Zhao Xu is already not much weaker than Uchiha Madara when he fought the 5 Cage. After all, although Uchiha Madara at that time had an extra Rinnegan, he didn't actually use it against the 5 Cage. And the Uchiha Madara at that time was brought back through Impure World reincarnation, so there was still a certain gap in strength compared to the real person. Perfect, let me act well. Uchiha Madara squinted his eyes, his gaze sharp. In the next second, the clones rushed towards the admirals without hesitation. Boom. Boom. As soon as they clashed, the admiral's eyes became even more serious. Each of these clones actually possesses power surpassing that of a vice admiral? Although they are still slightly weaker than the admirals, they are facing 5 of them. Laser. Kizaru suddenly attacked. He aimed at the original Uchiha Madara. However, in the face of the attack at the speed of light, Uchiha Madara's original body simply tilted his head slightly and easily avoided it. It seems it's not that easy to deal with after all. Kizaru smiled, but his eyes were incredibly serious. So strong and with so many clones, yet it doesn't affect the original's fighting power? Advertisement, you're cheating. Zhao Xu smiled. The Wood-style clone should be one of the strongest clones. Whether it's in terms of disguise or power, it can display quite impressive strength. As for the consumption, well, it is a bit high. But the problem is, now that I have Wood-style and Hashirama's cells, do I still care about consumption? Akainu suddenly threw a punch. Great eruption. The Uchiha Madara clone he attacked leapt without hesitation, while another Uchiha Madara clone beside it suddenly thrust a sword. Akainu hastily dodged, but before he could stabilize himself, another Uchiha Madara clone attacked. The coordination is quite good. After all, they are all the same person. Zephyr fought calmly. His experience far surpassed the 3 admirals at present, and he hadn't lost his arm. Although his stamina was a bit weaker, he was still within the safe range, and his combat power was stronger than the 3 admirals. A single clone is nothing, it's still weaker than an admiral, but in terms of quantity. If all the clones are like this, how strong will the original be? Zephyr frowned. Before this battle, Marine had introduced a lot of information to the combat personnel. For example, that giant called Susano. Suddenly, Uchiha Madara's original body spoke up. Next, I'll ask you all a question. In an instant, everyone's attention was focused on him. Uchiha Madara looked disdainfully at everyone. Which do you think is better, using or not using Susano for these clones? In the next second, everyone's expression completely changed. Chapter 35 Admiral is defeated. Second more please collect flowers tickets. Chapter 30. Admiral's defeat. Second update, seeking collection of flowers and votes. The battle situation has completely descended into a bitter struggle. Admiral Crane furrowed her brows, her expression grim. Up until now, almost every vice admiral has encountered an Uchiha Madara and is engaged in a desperate fight against him. However, the problem is that they are all being suppressed by Uchiha Madara. Of course, vice admirals are still vice admirals. With the support of many high-ranking marines and naval artillery, they are still managing to restrain Uchiha Madara and are unable to leave for the time being. But, now, the Uchiha Madara fighting against the vice admirals should all be clones. Crane bit her lip. The one fighting against the admirals should be the real body. Otherwise, the admirals wouldn't be trapped in such a fierce battle. But, report. Vice Admiral Stallo Berry can no longer hold on, he is requesting support. Vice Admiral Crane, Vice Admiral Doberman says he can only hold on for 3 more minutes. The Justice Judgment has been hit by the residual attack from Uchiha Madara and is starting to sink. All the news is bad. Crane's expression grew solemn as she glanced at the central battlefield. Currently, the only mobile combat force in the Marines is herself, Vice Admiral Crane. Her strength is not weak and can even be considered slightly weaker than an admiral. But, is the real Uchiha Madara really the one fighting against the admirals? Crane furrowed her brows, unable to make a decisive judgment. The one fighting against the admirals right now is just his clone, after all. Could it be that the real Uchiha Madara has already switched to one of his clones to fight against the vice admirals? Crane furrowed her brows. She didn't believe that this kind of fierce battle, which involved fighting against 5 admirals and over 10 vice admirals at the same time, could be sustained indefinitely. The clones would eventually break, but the Marines might not be able to hold on for that long. In reality, it was just as Crane had anticipated. The Marines were being suppressed everywhere. Advertisement. The Admiral's side of the battlefield was currently in the worst state. Bang! A Susano wielding a sharp blade sliced through the body of Qingxi. However, after a short while, Qingxi's body would regenerate from elementalization. Elementalization is the strongest ability of the 3 admirals. Lava, light, ice. Unless they are devil fruit users, they cannot kill them. With the 3 of them acting as shields and with the assistance of Zephyr and CP0's powerful members, they barely managed to maintain the battle. But everyone knows that this kind of tricky method cannot be sustained for long. The simplest problem is that even if Uchiha Madara himself cannot use Haki, as long as he has a bit of intelligence, he will not fail to prepare weapons made of sea stone to deal with elementalization enemies. Sea stone is a strategic resource, precious and as valuable as gold. But for such powerful individuals, it is still possible to find sea stone weapons. Sea stone weapons could appear at any time. As for why they haven't appeared yet, he is waiting for the right moment, the 5 of them thought in unison. The opportunity to kill Admiral in one fell swoop. After all, it is impossible for such a strong person to not be able to get their hands on a sea stone weapon. They worked hard to be vigilant against each other, not giving the other a chance, otherwise it could be really dangerous. However, Zhao Xu himself touched his chin and said, "Indeed, it's quite a disadvantage to not have a sea stone weapon." He really doesn't have any sea stone at all. Sea stone is a strategic resource, and the sea stone in the hands of pirates is mostly smuggled. It is extremely precious and only the wealthy Marines can use it on warships. Of course, it is not difficult to find, at least not for strong individuals. But, it takes time, and Zhao Xu simply doesn't have that time. Of course, he doesn't need it either. Advertisement. The Hokage world also has effective means to deal with this kind of strange energy. But is he here to eliminate Marine admirals? Zhao Xu's mouth curled up, showing a contemptuous look. A mere sand grain is no match for me. Arrogant, Akainu immediately became angry. 5 admirals made their move, but they couldn't even touch his clothes. What face does the Marine have? Anyway, Uchiha Madara hasn't used a method to deal with his elementalization yet. He gritted his teeth and prepared to withstand the sword of Susano in front of him, and rushed towards the true body of Uchiha Madara. But, bang, peefed. Akainu spat out a mouthful of blood, his face full of astonishment. His elementalization was broken. Zhao Xu looked at Akainu as if he was looking at a fool. Compared to impure world reincarnation, elementalization is far inferior. Even impure world reincarnation can be sealed, so why not elementalization? As long as he loads the power of sealing onto Susano, he can naturally touch Akainu. Uchiha Madara himself is also very skilled in sealing techniques, such as sealing the hearts of Rin and Obito, preventing them from using their own power to commit suicide. As one of the final bosses, it is difficult to find a weakness that Uchiha Madara is not good at. In fact, when Zhao Xu's strength is further enhanced, he won't even need sealing techniques. He will directly use the Black Rod and the Yin-Yang Jade. The dissolution of all things, are you afraid? Quick, protect Akainu. Seeing Akainu spitting blood, Zephyr couldn't help but speak up. Kizaru, who was the fastest, rushed over to save him at the risk of being hit by Susano, while the others fought desperately to hold back the clones. But everyone's eyes were filled with uncontrollable shock. Are they going to lose? They couldn't even touch Uchiha Madara's clothes, and they're going to lose? Chapter 31. If even the heroes run away, who else can stand up? Chapter 31. If even the heroes run away, who else can stand up? Third update, please collect and vote for flowers. Defeat. This word appeared in Crane's mind for the first time. Messages for help from vice admirals on various warships kept coming in at her command center, all expressing, without reinforcements, Uchiha Madara is about to break through. But reinforcements? Are there any available now? Yes, but only one. That's right, it's Crane herself. This time, we brought a fighting force comparable to a 4 Emperors pirate crew, but we are being defeated on all fronts? Crane listened to the continuous calls for help, her face filled with disbelief. To be honest, the strength present here was already extremely powerful. Compared to the entire 4 Emperors pirate crew, they were only slightly inferior in terms of top combat power, lacking experts at the level of the 4 Emperors. If it were individual 4 Emperors, they could be slowly surrounded and killed. But, they were still completely suppressed by Uchiha Madara. The situation of the vice admirals on the warships goes without saying, and according to the observations of the liaison officers on the front lines, the admirals were also at a disadvantage. Uchiha Madara. This is a powerful individual comparable to the 4 Emperors. Crane took a deep breath and slowly closed her eyes. No, perhaps in terms of combat power alone, Uchiha Madara and the 4 Emperors are on par, but in terms of various methods. Dozens of clones, each with Vice Admiral level combat power at the weakest. Do the 4 Emperors have this ability? Even Charlotte Linlin, who is known for her strange abilities with the Soul Fruit, is not this formidable. Regardless, we can't let him break through so easily. Crane sighed inwardly and stood up. Although this Uchiha Madara here looks like a clone, if one Uchiha Madara escapes, Marine's grand operation will be completely in vain. At the very least, they need to convey Marine's efforts. So Crane immediately rushed to the warship with the worst situation, where the Vice Admiral had already fainted. As for the incoming calls for help, advertisement, they could only be ignored. In reality, the Admirals were being suppressed miserably, but at least they had strength. More than half of them had elemental abilities. But what about the Vice Admirals? Some of the stronger Vice Admirals naturally had an easy time. With warships and subordinates assisting them, it wasn't difficult to hold off a clone of Uchiha Madara. But the weaker Vice Admirals. Boom! Vice Admiral Ordington was heavily hit on the ship, and the tremendous impact made the ship tremble. Damn, how can he be this strong? Vice Admiral Ordington spat out blood, despairingly looking at the giant before him. Susano. Although it wasn't in its complete form, that giant standing on the sea had immense power with every move. Are the reinforcements not here yet? The rear admiral next to him couldn't help but curse. No. The communications officer also felt helpless. What could he do? It's not his fault that there are no reinforcements. Vice Admiral Ordington, although not the weakest, was relatively unlucky. Because he was on Zephyr's ship. Zephyr's ship was one of the most advanced in the Marines. However, the problem was that Zephyr's position was that of a training instructor. Although it had cannons, fundamentally speaking, this ship was a Marine training vessel. Its firepower was naturally far inferior to other warships. And the soldiers? Faced with such a giant, how many sacrifices would they have to make to be of any use? Not to mention that the soldiers on the training ship, although considered elite compared to ordinary soldiers, were ultimately just recruits who hadn't graduated. Advertisement. Do you all want to dance too? Uchiha Madara's clone stood within Susano, looking disdainfully at the people on the warship. Smack. He took a step forward, and Susano's huge foot made a muffled sound as it stomped on the water surface, causing large waves to spread. The warship swayed, and many recruits, frightened, retreated. Clearly, their courage had been shattered. But Zephyr was still Zephyr after all. A group of recruits who mustered up their courage rushed towards Susano. However, everyone, step back. This is not a battle you can participate in. Vice Admiral Ordington's eyes widened. These were Marines' future. However, swish, with a single sword strike, even if it didn't hit their bodies, the wind it stirred up scattered all the charging recruits. Then, the sword swung towards the warship. Damn it! Vice Admiral Ordington looked at the approaching giant sword with despair in his eyes. Is this as far as it goes? Suddenly, a gust of wind blew. A bald man in a yellow jumpsuit walked forward casually, saying, "It's so windy." Is he a newcomer brought by Zephyr? Vice Admiral Ordington was taken aback, then immediately shouted, "Newcomer, run! This is an enemy you can't handle. Run away!" Saitama was momentarily stunned, then smiled and said, "In the face of disaster, if even the heroes run away, who else can stand up?" The next moment, Saitama took action, with a simple punch. Boom! Susano shattered. Chapter 32 Another good performance. The first is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 32 Another great acting performance. First update, please collect flowers and votes. How is this possible? That giant was actually killed in just one blow. Vice Admiral is an extremely formidable opponent. No, this is an illusion, I must be hallucinating. Yes, that guy Uchiha Madara seems to be very skilled in genjutsu, this must be his illusion. However, 1 second passed, 10 seconds passed, 3 minutes passed. Uchiha Madara's figure still did not appear. The figure inside Susano had already dissipated into smoke under Saitama's punch. Everyone stared in shock at the situation before them, completely stunned. What a great acting performance, as expected of me, Saitama thought to himself. Of course, this was all just acting. The current Zhao Xu, who is still fighting with 5 Admiral PK, how could a mere clone punch through Susano? Of course it's possible, as long as you can coordinate with the Uchiha Madara clone controlling Susano. If he cooperates well, even a breath from you can blow away Susano. As for what actually happened, well, when Zhao Xu, in his true form, played the role of Saitama, he also had this power. Now, as a clone, he can only rely on the cooperation of the Uchiha Madara clone. Vice Admiral Ordington looked at the silly and cute Saitama with an incredulous expression. Advertisement, who is he? Before the battle started, he thought that the newcomers were not useful, and he ordered this guy named Saitama, who wasn't even wearing a marine uniform, to step aside. But now, you are Saitama, right? Ordington swallowed his saliva and finally reacted, with such great power. Why didn't you say so earlier? Huh? Did I not say it? Saitama was taken aback, looking at Ordington with confusion. Ordington's face turned red, as if this guy had indeed said it. But, well, I'm actually very strong. Those were Saitama's words at the time. That strange tone, the lack of energy in his voice, as if he were a dried-up salted fish. Who would think that a salted fish is actually a real dragon? Of course, now is not the time to consider these things. Mr. Saitama, since you have the strength, can you please go support our allies around here? Ordington requested. There are enemies fighting against us Marines over there too? He had already seen Uchiha Madara's clone fighting with other vice admirals in the distance, which was why he didn't scold the communication officer like Rear Admiral did. They needed reinforcements everywhere, but where could they find reinforcements for you? Saitama thought for a moment and nodded. Oh, sure. Well, he could also perform on other warships. Meanwhile, so, Saitama's clone broke my clone. Uchiha Madara squinted his eyes and suddenly burst into laughter. Interesting, interesting, interesting. The admirals were taken aback and looked over. Advertisement, I didn't expect that among you, apart from the few present, there would be such a strong person. Uchiha Madara laughed heartily, breaking my clone with just one punch. Your preparations are not bad, breaking Uchiha Madara's clone with just one punch? Who has this ability? The admirals looked at each other, breaking it with one punch. Right now, they were almost being broken by Uchiha Madara with one punch. Zephyr suddenly realized, is it Saitama? Is he really that strong? Zephyr naturally knew that Saitama was very strong. So far, he had not seen an opponent that Saitama couldn't defeat with one punch. That's why he was so eager to recruit Saitama into the Marines. However, this operation required absolute trust. Apart from the three admirals, Zephyr himself, and the strong members of CP0 directly under the world government, no other vice admirals were allowed to join the battlefield. That's why he left Saitama on the warship. Of course, at first, he wouldn't participate. If it weren't for Uchiha Madara's clone attacking all the ships at the same time, the vice admirals would have already joined the battle. But, if I had known he was this strong, I should have brought him along. Zephyr slapped his palm, full of regret. The others frowned as well. If Marine had such a strong combat force and used it properly. The strong members of CP0 also furrowed their brows. Marine has become powerful again, this matter must be reported to the world government. 1, 2, 3. Uchiha Madara squinted his eyes, have 5 clones been taken out already? Enough, let's end the fun here. His eyes narrowed, a hint of interest flashed in his eyes. It's time for me to leave too. Chapter 33 Marine Supernova Saitama. Second more please collect flowers tickets. Chapter 33. Marine Supernova Saitama. Second update, please collect fresh flower tickets. The battle quickly came to an end. Even with Crane personally taking action, he couldn't change the fact that Marine was defeated. After Uchiha Madara's clone broke through Vice Admiral's warship, instead of dealing with other warships or helping other clones, he directly broke through the encirclement and disappeared. Obviously, even the Chief of Staff Crane couldn't figure out where Uchiha Madara was. The admirals were completely defeated on the battlefield. The 5 admirals couldn't even break through the clones. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Uchiha Madara himself left directly. Fortunately, he left, otherwise some admirals might have been left behind. If it weren't for Vice Admiral and Crane's intervention, along with Uchiha Madara's departure, the clones on the admiral's battlefield would have continued the fight for a long time. There is no doubt that Marine has lost face this time. The world government will probably condemn Marine, but it's unlikely they will say anything too extreme, because the CP0 of the world government also got involved and gained nothing. A great defeat. A complete defeat. Uchiha Madara became famous in one battle. His reputation spread far and wide, inspiring fear in others. However, Marine did not come away empty-handed. Saitama, Zephyr, although injured, was not sad but rather happy. He looked excitedly at Saitama and said, "You are really strong." Zephyr knew that Saitama was strong and had a strong sense of justice. But he never expected him to be this strong. The unexpected surprise made him happy, and he didn't even care about Uchiha Madara's escape. Although Uchiha Madara made a big move, he didn't actually do anything bad, he just killed a celestial dragon. On the other hand, Saitama, a gleam flashed in Zephyr's eyes. Saitama calmly peeled a banana. Marine's supplies were quite good, with fresh fruits. Zephyr, being injured, had received many fruit baskets from friends and family, which happened to provide him with some food. You might become the supernova of our Marine. Advertisement. Oh. Saitama earnestly ate his banana. The 3 admirals are not blind. With such great achievements, you will definitely be rewarded by higher ups. Eating bananas, eating bananas, eating bananas. This time, you saved many vice admirals. Your strength is also sufficient. Unfortunately, at that time, I didn't know much about your abilities. If I had sent you to join us in attacking Uchiha Madara, perhaps the situation would have been different. Delicious, delicious, delicious. When we return, I will recommend you to Admiral Sengoku. If everything goes well, you might even be able to request a fleet from Sengoku. Saitama finally paused his eating speed, slowly raised his head and glanced at Zephyr. What's wrong? Are you so surprised that you can't believe such good things can happen? No. I just wanted to ask, do you eat the apples in the fruit basket? If you don't eat them, can I have them? Suddenly, Zephyr felt that relying on someone like Saitama, who had become a Marine supernova, might not be so reliable. As Zephyr had anticipated, after Zephyr submitted a report on Saitama's achievements to Sengoku, Sengoku unsurprisingly decided to commend Saitama. In fact, this was also his best choice. At this moment, when many admirals were defeated, vice admirals were injured, and the prestige of the Marines greatly diminished, what would happen to the morale of the Marines if they didn't have a new aspiration and longing? How would they deter pirates? Therefore, Saitama, who held the greatest advantage, was promoted to Rear Admiral. The promotion was significant. Rear Admiral was already a rank second only to Vice Admiral, and even in the Grand Line, it was enough to suppress a region. But neither the Vice Admirals nor the Admirals had any complaints. With his strength, if it weren't for joining the Marines for too short a time, it was estimated that becoming an Admiral was possible. Even considering the accumulated achievements, reputation, and so on, it couldn't be given too low. Moreover, Saitama had made great contributions this time. The only trouble was that Saitama, unlike ordinary Marines, didn't accept the hierarchical relationship between superiors and subordinates. So Sengoku could only helplessly assign Saitama's superior to Zephyr. After all, Zephyr was very trustworthy and valued talent. He wouldn't let Saitama suffer. The superior relationship was thus settled, but what about the subordinate relationship? Advertisement. The recruits under my command are all elite. How about you pick some to join you? Zephyr generously said. Zephyr was in charge of the Marine recruit training camp and was the overall instructor of the Marine Academy. The recruits under his direct command were the cream of the crop. Of course, Saitama also had to be equipped with elite Marines. Because Zephyr planned to let Saitama independently lead a warship to search and hunt pirates in the Grand Line. Just like the pirate guerrilla team that Zephyr would form in the future. Choosing soldiers. I don't want to deal with that. Saitama sighed with dead fish eyes. Heroes don't have superiors or subordinates. You are a Marine now. Zephyr frowned. I am a hero driven by interest, Saitama lazily said. Zephyr frowned. Although he highly regarded Saitama, this was too unlike a soldier. How could a soldier not have superiors or subordinates? Then who would they listen to on the battlefield? Superiors could handle themselves, but subordinates absolutely cannot be without. Zephyr sensei, At this moment, a recruit next to them bit their lip and gathered their courage. What if Naval Headquarters sends a deputy to handle ship navigation and other issues? Zephyr was taken aback. This was a solution. A normal captain needed to possess a lot of specialized knowledge: wind direction, navigation, reading compasses, artillery attacks, soldiers' daily training. But Saitama obviously didn't know these things. That works too. Zephyr nodded and said, Recruit, what's your name again? Toshigi, Zephyr sensei. I'm Toshigi. Toshigi immediately straightened up and saluted. I remember now. You're the girl who was given a sword by Saitama. Yes. Thank you, Rear Admiral Saitama, for valuing me. Very well, then you will join Saitama's team. Yes, Zephyr sensei. Chapter 34 Saitama Rear Admiral, please pursue Uchiha Madara. The third change is to collect flowers tickets. Chapter 34. Rear Admiral Saitama, I request that you pursue Uchiha Madara. Third update, please collect and vote for flowers. And so, the fleet under the command of Saitama was established. In reality, there was no need for much concern. As the organization that dominates the seas, the Marines, arranging a warship was a simple task. Toshigi, due to her valuable suggestions, was promoted to warrant officer. For a recruit of only 12 or 13 years old, this was already an exceptional promotion. And then, the other sailors were also assigned accordingly. Gunners, navigators, ship repairmen, communicators, chefs. The Marines were a large organization, and Zephyr personally oversaw the recruit training camp. It was easy to arrange a warship. Saitama didn't need to search for them one by one like Luffy. The Marines directly dispatched them. If you think they are not suitable, you can send them back and they will be reassigned to you. Although the recruits joining Saitama's warship lacked experience, they only lacked a bit of experience. After some time, Naval Headquarters would send an experienced officer to serve as Saitama's deputy, which would be enough to make up for the lack of experience. Of course, they haven't been dispatched yet, because the higher-ups at Naval Headquarters are still reviewing this major defeat. Naval Headquarters. I didn't expect Uchiha Madara to be so strong. Sengoku took a deep breath and closed his eyes. If only you had gone there earlier. Garp ate his senbei nonchalantly and said. Sengoku's mouth moved, but in the end, he let out a sigh. Go there? How could he possibly go there? The Marines were powerful, with many experts. They had Admiral-level combat power and even 4 Emperors-level combat power. Advertisement, but there were also many areas that the Marines needed to take care of. Let's not talk about Marijoy. Can you afford to leave it unguarded? Who knows what's happening with the 4 Emperors? Can you trust the surveillance ships? Can you afford to be completely unprepared? And there are other pirates in the New World. Sengoku had already mobilized all the available forces. Even the world government had sent reinforcements. But the result? If I had known he was this strong, I wouldn't have gone to fight. Sengoku slammed the table in anger. He wouldn't have gone to fight at all. The 4 Emperors were only those 4 people until Ace's incident, and that's when the Marines seized the opportunity. Otherwise, they wouldn't have fought at all. Garp ate his senbei without a care, looking at Sengoku's unpleasant expression. It had been a long time since he had seen Sengoku look so bad. Garp, don't you feel anything? Sengoku became furious when he saw this and said, You are a Marine Vice Admiral. TCH, is Uchiha Madara a pirate? Garp said nonchalantly, he didn't plunder or massacre. He just killed a few celestial dragons. It's not a big deal. Sengoku interrupted angrily. Not a big deal? Have the 4 emperors killed celestial dragons? Have other pirates killed celestial dragons? Who made the celestial dragons go after him first? Garp said indifferently. Anyway, there are so many celestial dragons. What's the big deal if 1 or 2 die? 1 or 2 die. Sengoku's mouth twitched. He knew that Garp himself didn't like the celestial dragons, which was why he spoke like that. In fact, he also disliked the celestial dragons and sometimes even wanted to go to Marijoy and kill them himself. Advertisement. But the problem was that Uchiha Madara's actions not only struck at the celestial dragons but also at the prestige of the world government and the Marines. The Shichibukai plan needs to be accelerated. Sengoku narrowed his eyes and thought to himself. And of course, there's Uchiha Madara's bounty. On the other side, all the personnel on Saitama's warship, except for the vice captain, were ready. Zephyr even personally came to Saitama's warship and handed him the Marine's Justice Cape. Put on this Justice Cape. Even if you don't wear it anymore in the future, I really want to see what you look like wearing it. Alright. Saitama shrugged and shook out the cape, draping it over his shoulders. The Justice Cape fluttered in the wind, like the rising sun, dazzling and eye-catching. Seeing the cape fluttering with justice, Zephyr's eyes became somewhat moist. Justice. A hero. He hoped that he would always be the hero of Marine's justice. Casually wiping away the tears in the corners of his eyes, Zephyr revealed a smile. The orders from the Marines have also arrived. Rear Admiral Saitama. You will lead your ship to roam the Grand Line and eliminate pirates. The Marines' intelligence network will be open to you, and you can also rely on Marine bases for supplies at any time. Oh, by the way, in order to allow you to maintain your freedom of action, I specifically obtained an exclusive order for you from Naval Headquarters. Exclusive order? Saitama was taken aback. Yes. Zephyr nodded solemnly. You know Garp, right? He pursued the Pirate King Roger on the orders of Naval Headquarters. And now, the Marine orders Rear Admiral Saitama to pursue Uchiha Madara starting today. Chapter 35 Saitama Rear Admiral's Training Content. Chapter 35. Training Content of Rear Admiral Saitama. First update, please collect fresh flowers and votes. Chasing Uchiha Madara. Of course, it's not actually chasing him. We don't even know where Uchiha Madara is, and he's not even a dedicated pirate. Why bother chasing him? But that doesn't mean we can't use that title. Back in the day, Garp chased after Pirate King Roger for several years and eventually forced him to become the Pirate King. But so what? Although none of Roger's crew members were killed by Garp, he did kill a bunch of random small pirates around him. Just having the reputation of chasing Roger is enough. In reality, we should just focus on fighting pirates. Besides, this incident has caused a huge uproar. Uchiha Madara's news is already appearing in the newspapers, and the Marines must respond to this. The answer given by the battle results is to form a special unit to chase Uchiha Madara. We, the Marines, firmly believe that justice will prevail. No matter how strong Uchiha Madara is, it won't stop us from pursuing him. Whether we can kill him or not is a matter of ability. Whether we chase him or not is a matter of determination. Sengoku made this distinction very clear. It's just this order. Saitama's mouth twitched, and he finally said, Alright, I'll do my best. As expected, the news about Uchiha Madara quickly appeared in the newspapers. Defeating 3 admirals together? Attacking vice admirals with clones? Escaping from Marines' massive encirclement? This news instantly caused a sensation throughout the Grand Line. If Uchiha Madara's fame hadn't spread so quickly and he wasn't a pirate, someone might have already called him the second Pirate King. His bounty also increased significantly, reaching 3 billion berries. This number is second only to the 4 emperors. In fact, after Blackbeard became one of the 4 emperors, his bounty was only 2.2476 billion berries. Uchiha Madara only did 2 things: killing celestial dragons and breaking through Marines' encirclement. But these 2 things were enough to greatly increase his reputation. Advertisement. And in response to this, the Marines. Saitama. They forcefully promoted Saitama to Rear Admiral and publicized his strength, even bringing in a bunch of Vice Admirals to speak. Vice Admiral Wushe. Saitama is very strong, much stronger than me. Vice Admiral Steele. No matter the enemy, they will be defeated with a single punch. It's a pity we don't know his true strength, otherwise we would have arranged for him to join the Admirals and surround Uchiha Madara. Vice Admiral Oroding. He saved my life. His justice is the brightest light in that failure. Zephyr. That man is Marine's hope. Garp. I believe he will definitely bring Uchiha Madara to justice, just like how I brought Roger to justice back then. Although boasting and flattery make up 90% of these statements, it can be said that, except for Zephyr, the others may have some understanding of Saitama's strength, but they definitely don't value him that much. However, there's a saying, repeat a lie 8,000 times, and it becomes the truth. So, under the bombardment of Marines' reports, Zhao Xu, with a bewildered expression, discovered that the sailors on the entire warship would occasionally look at him with worshipful eyes. And among those who worshipped him the most fervently was Saitama. Rear Admiral, how did you become so strong? Toshigi, with a face full of admiration, asked, Can you teach me? Saitama noticed the fisheye attention and saw that many Marines around him were secretly looking at him as Toshigi spoke. But, it's just the perfect stage for a performance. Do you want to know? Saitama's expression suddenly became serious. Thump. Thump. The hearts of the Marines around him raced. Toshigi swallowed her saliva. Yes. Well, if you want to know, listen carefully, Saitama calmly said. The Marines around him focused intensely. For a moment, on the huge warship, there was no sound except for the sound of waves. Saitama's face was serious, his eyes filled with solemnity. The key lies in whether you can persist in executing this arduous training plan. Training? Not relying on devil fruit, but training? Advertisement. What kind of training is it? Listen, Toshigi, the key is perseverance. Saitama slightly closed his eyes. No matter how difficult it is, you must persevere. It took me 3 years to reach this level. The next second, Saitama spoke seriously. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats. The expressions of the crowd froze, and also a 10-kilometer run. Do it every day. Toshigi's eyes widened. Of course, you can't skip 3 meals a day, you can eat bananas in the morning, and the focus is on training your willpower. No air conditioning in summer or winter. At first, it's painfully unbearable, and you might want to rest for a day, but if you want to become a powerful hero, no matter how painful it is, you must train every day until you vomit blood. Even if your legs are too heavy to move, you must continue to squat. Even if your arms creak, you must continue to do push-ups. I noticed changes in my body after a year and a half. I became bald, but I also became stronger. In other words, you must be willing to sacrifice your hair and train yourself to death. That's the only secret to becoming powerful. Saitama said proudly, those guys who rely on abilities and mysterious fruits will never reach my level. Relying on oneself to become stronger is the true strength of humans. Toshigi looked shocked, and the others had blank and stiff expressions. What? Is this how Saitama Rear Admiral became stronger? Please don't joke around. Toshigi couldn't help but speak up. Saitama Rear Admiral, haven't you seen the Marines' training schedule? Even the weakest recruit undergoes training that exceeds the intensity you mentioned. Your training is simply not difficult enough. It's just the average level for ordinary people. What we want to know is the secret to how you became so powerful. Toshigi. Saitama blinked his dead fish eyes. But, this is how I became stronger.